What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Die Hard MMA podcast, where the information is free and the picks don't matter. I'm your host. I am Clint, and it is a glorious Monday evening. The UFC is back, thank God for that, because we are coming off of Bellator 273, where I got my absolute ass handed to me. I ended up throwing out a couple picks on Eagle FC, and those actually went just fine. Those went pretty well. Scraped a little baby profit out. Thought it was a sign of good things to come, and oh boy, did Bellator absolutely put me in my place. So I've decided that, first off, I've got a bad history with Bellator. They're basically like my toxic ex. I had, one good time about a year and a half ago, so I get excited every time I see their name pop up on my phone, but then when I sign up, I end up having just a horrible time and end up going home crying at the end of the night. So that's me and Bellator. That's the relationship that we have. I'm not overly excited about it. Full honesty and transparency. You guys always know what we do here. This is a sports betting show. We're breaking down the UFC card coming up on Saturday from a betting perspective. Going to try and put some money in your pockets, but I am getting whooped so far at the beginning of 2022, down a whopping 12 units already to kick off the year, which is almost half of the profit from 2021. So not starting in a good place, but we know the long game. It's a long-term game. It's a grind. It's not something we're going to get rich quick over the weekend. So apologies for anybody who has tailed my picks, because I am right there with you, losing my ass right now. So we're going to try and right this ship. Welcoming in the chat, we already got 33 live viewers. Everybody smash that like button for me. What's up, Dog MMA, Grateful Dude, Joseph Newsombaum. We've got Paul Blanchfield, Aiden Simone, FTO Combat, Evan L, Hype MMA. We've got Gregory T. Moron. Sorry for butchering your last name there. Going fast here. Derek Wilcox, Fender Jazz, everybody, the same old, the OGs, the crew. And boy, do I have a treat for you all this evening. We have our guest, first time appearance on the Die Hard MMA podcast by popular demand, none other than the badass himself, Liam Picks Fights. Liam, how you doing tonight, man?
Clint, I'm doing well, brother. I'm operating on 5.5 hours of sleep or so. Wanted to get up early today, despite the fact that I was getting my ass kicked and dealing some ass kickings yesterday. So absolute grinder of a day, but wanted to make sure that we were prepped for the show. And man, I'm excited to be here. I think that we actually have a pretty exciting card, that we're going to be breaking down today. I know that there's not, necessarily the star power of some of the other UFC events, but I do think that there's some slept on names here. There's some interesting stuff to break down. So I got some underdog shots that I'm ready to let fly as well. So I know that that's something you like to do as well. I think it should be a good show for pulling some dog shots.
That's awesome, man. I love hearing that. Hopefully we line up on those dog shots. I've got a few locked in already. I can't wait to hear what you've got to say. The first thing, though, that I've got to go ahead and throw out there for everybody listening, if you don't follow me on Twitter, first off, what are you doing? You should. But I actually put out a poll about 2-3 months ago. I put out a poll, and I wanted to know who the people wanted on my show. I wanted to know who exactly were the guests, the handicappers that the fans wanted to see come on the podcast. And Liam, by a landslide, you were number one. So I had already had you on the short list. Like, you were already on the radar. We were going to get you on the show this year. But with the amount of love you got in that poll, I was like, we got to do it. We got to do it immediately. So just want to give a shout out to you and the Twitter sphere. You have absolutely lit up the MMA community. They like seeing you. So, hey, here we are.
Well, dude, it's honestly just a huge blessing. Had a good year last year, but it was mostly, the second half of the year, I started to dial in my process a little bit more. Started off this year a little bit rocky like yourself. So we understand it's a long game, and I appreciate the people that are supporting me. I think they know that I put in that work. I sent you a document earlier this week, and I know we try to keep our distance, so we come to this with fresh conversation. And I just wanted you to know that I'm really trying to put in that kind of work, when I'm doing my tape study as well. So, this is a card that I went pretty damn hard. I have man, how many pages did it end up being? Like 20 pages on Jack Hermansson for this fight. I went through his entire UFC career. So I'm fired up and I'm ready to break down these fights with you. Appreciate this opportunity.
I can't wait, man. I love the attention to detail. We're going to get into it. All right, everybody, it's about that time. Let's move on to the actual part of the show that you got here for, is the handicapping breakdown. Of course, the show is brought to you by Pub Sports Radio. Subscribe here if you haven't already and smash that like button so the the ones and zeros on the internet know that you like what we're bringing to you. First fight of the night. We're kicking off the main event, man. Jack Hermansson taking on Sean Strickland. Why wouldn't we start right off the top on this one? And kind of like we talked about, guys, this is a gambling podcast, so we got to talk about numbers and odds. Sean Strickland currently anywhere from a -210 to a -250 favorite around the internet right now. There's a lot of discrepancy in that number. Book's not really quite sure what to do with this. Bettors going on either side. Jack Hermansson, the Joker, can be had for +175 or +195, anywhere in that ballpark here. The Joker is 12-6. Strickland is 22-6. I don't know why I said 12. 22-6. Sean Strickland is 24-3. Jack Hermansson 2-2 in his last 4, kind of struggling to keep that contender slot that we've known him to be at recently. Kind of a boxing and BJJ style fighter, mixes those two pretty well, likes to work with his hands on the feet. Not as much of a wrestler on the mat, although he does, of course, have the wrestling to go with it. More of a slick submission guy, likes to attack the heel hooks, crazy rolls, good scrambles. He actually stayed in the phone booth against Marvin Vettori early in their fight just a couple of fights ago, and both guys in that fight landed over 120 significant strikes. So we know he can absolutely go to war when he wants to. He's got a good ability to recover, but he also has some chin concerns that I'm a little on the fence about, man. He got dropped and hurt badly by Vettori early in that fight in the very first round, and it's one of those spots where if Vettori was any more of a finisher himself, that fight probably doesn't see the second round. So a little bit of a concern there. Jack Hermansson's going to have a 1-inch reach advantage. Sean Strickland, he's the UFC resident psychopath, man. This guy has absolutely lit the internet on fire recently. Hot takes, showing off some random stuff. I'm not sure yet if it's good or bad for the sport, but he is definitely rising in popularity and putting some eyes on us. Now he's moving into that contender circle, so things are just going to get crazier from this point. All I can say about Sean Strickland, man, is volume, volume, volume. Like, he's a boxer. He likes to come forward. He's got slick hands. He's durable. He's an absolute shit-eating wild man. He doesn't really get tested on the mat, but whenever he does hit down there, we know he's got a very underrated ground game. We just never get to see it, so it's kind of hard to rate exactly where he is. Thought we were going to get a chance to see it because he had a grappling match a couple of months ago, and he lost by flying rear naked choke because he just walked away from his opponent, completely turned his back on him. It was one of the goofiest, most Sean Strickland things I have ever seen. I want to hear your thoughts on this fight, man. This is such a sweet matchup and a really good spot here to see who potentially will be, getting one or the next title shot in the division. What's your take on this one, man?
Yeah, so this is an interesting fight. Right off the bat, Sean Strickland is somebody that, I have a little bit of a hard time getting a read on this guy, right? He disappeared for a little while. He had this motorcycle accident. That's kind of just like a wrench in the career. He also has these career moves. He's at 70, he's at 85. Where is he going to try and make this title run? And it seems like 85 is where he settled at, especially after the motorcycle accident. And he looks like a much more natural fighter in this weight class. He's a little bit faster. He can pump out that jab consistently. And what I see from him that's really impressive is that he makes in-fight reads. Somebody pointed out the Alex Garcia fight as a fight to take a look at. He did get taken down in that fight. But what happens is he basically wins the first 4 minutes of the round, gets taken down, controls wrists, controls posture so he doesn't get the guard pass, and he batters him from bottom a little bit. He still wins those rounds. Then in the third round, he gets taken down early. And so you'd expect, is this guy just going to keep pulling guard and trying to punch from the bottom like all these guys do and lose rounds? giving them away. No, he gets back up. He gets feet on hips. He pushes away. So depending on what time in the round he was getting taken down, he had different answers. That just showed me that he was using fight IQ. I think we've seen that develop over time. He's kind of a bit of a crazy man, but he fights smart. He doesn't get out over his skis against Uriah Hall. He just patiently jabbed him apart. I don't see why he can't do that to Jack here. We've seen other fighters implement that strategy. Granted, a lot of the strikers that have given Jack problems are southpaws. So I just want to point that out. This is going to be an orthodox fighter in Sean Strickland. So I think that, a lot of people have faith in Hermansson here. I think a lot of his win equity is in a submission. I think he'd need to find an opportunity, maybe a Kelvin Gastelum-like scramble where he finds that heel hook early. Both guys are dry. Sean's a little crazy. He drops him, follows him to the ground or something, gets submitted. I could see those scenarios playing out. And I could even see Jack maybe troubling him, winning an early round or two with the wrestling. But Jack is very physical in his wrestling, right? He uses a lot of his energy trying to do it. I've seen him submit jiu-jitsu black belts, though. So what am I going to say? He can't submit this guy? Of course he can submit this guy. He submitted Renzo Gracie black belt Dave Branch cleanly. He submitted Gerald Mearshart cleanly. Jack Hermansson can grapple with good guys. He looked competent in that wrestling match with Khamzat Chimaev. So I don't want to undersell Jack Hermansson here. I didn't put my hard-earned money behind Sean Strickland in the matchup, but, every fight starts on the feet. I feel like Sean Strickland, for as long as the fight's on the feet, is going to be the much more comfortable guy. Jack has gotten a little more comfortable on the feet, but even in that Shabazian fight, it's only when he gets him to the ground that he starts to feel comfortable again. We've seen him get hurt in multiple fights. It's kind of hard to predict that he's going to win this one without that big knockout shot, that lands clean. We have seen that happen, like that slip on a banana peel, but it was at 170. I feel like Strickland's a pretty durable guy at 85. So I'm going to have to back Sean Strickland here as my pick outright. No money on the fight at this point, but I'll see what happens with this line. I hear a lot of people on the Hermansson side, and, I want to see what happens with this prop market as well. I didn't look at it, prior to taping, but just taking a peek here, Hermansson sub, I'm not even seeing it readily available. So I'll take a look at that later. But, yeah, I think Hermansson sub if you wanted to play the prop market on Jack, but otherwise, I feel like this is probably a favorite or pass situation.
Man, the bookies are slacking after a week off. We don't even have props on a Monday. What are they doing? I couldn't agree with you more, man. I absolutely feel like this is Strickland's fight to lose. He is in the driver's seat in this spot. He's got a great matchup. And let's not forget, you go back to this guy facing off against Kamaru Usman. He held Kamaru to 6 out of 8. On his defensive takedowns. Kamaru only landed 2 out of 8 takedowns in that fight. Like, his takedown defense is no joke. 82% over the course of his UFC career. So even though we do want to give the props where it's due to Jack Hermansson, we can't say he's a bad wrestler or anything like that. I don't know that he's taking Sean Strickland down consistently. It's one of those things where I think if he's going to take him down and finish him, it's got to be the first one. I don't see Jack Hermansson getting 2, 3, 4 takedowns and having multiple opportunities to land a submission. I really feel like he's got to club and sub him, or he's got to get him to the ground once and literally just never let him back to his feet.
That sounds about right to me. I mean, I could see if like Sean's cardio fell off a cliff or something, like if the grappling takes it out of him, maybe. That's like Jack's path to a decision in my mind. Is like he just completely exhausts Strickland, and then Strickland can't operate on the feet. But yeah, I think that's a small amount of his win equity. I think he's pretty finish reliant here.
I completely agree, man. I think it's finish or bust for Jack Hermansson, and I have not been overly impressed with his last couple of performances. The durability concerns, the hand speed of Sean Strickland. Like, I think this is a favorite or pass spot, and I'm honestly surprised by this line movement. I saw that we've got some love for Hermansson, and that line dipped down just a little bit from about -225 to -210, and I'm wondering why this isn't a hammer spot. Like, I haven't bet it yet, but I'm tempted to lay the wood here on Sean Strickland. You got something there, man. Hit me.
Yeah, the one other thing that I forgot to mention, Clinton, I wanted to get this off my chest, was just the power, right? A lot of the guys that have given Hermansson pause were able to sting him with the power early. And Strickland, he's got, those head kicks. He's got a couple things that he can do that'll put some damage on you. But a lot of what he does isn't that powerful. It's just snappy jabs over and over and over with consistency. So that's maybe the thing that's giving people confidence, is that maybe we see Jack willing to run through and eat some of these jabs on the way in to try and get the body lock. And I just think he's going to have a hard time. Every jab intercepts your forward movement. So if you get hit with one, you've got to and then try and go forward again. And I think that, Sean has shown the defensive footwork to navigate out of those spaces and fire back.
I agree. And what we've seen from Sean Strickland, too, is volume. He's not just going to throw one jab. Like what he did against Uriah Hall. Something that people may not realize is he just constantly touches you, man. Like he will throw punches at 40 to 50% power and just pop, pop, pop. You know what I mean? Like he's got the power to knock people out. If he wanted to sit on a punch and take someone's head off, he could. It's almost like he's got a sick, twisted love for dragging people deep and just hurting them on repeat without giving them the option to leave the cage. Like he makes them get back into the center of the ring with him. It's almost like he loves torturing people that way, which the way he is, I honestly wouldn't be shocked if he fully admitted that, because I had him by knockout against Hall. I think I sprinkled rounds 3, 4, and 5, expecting Hall's durability to give. And man, Hall could have been out of that fight in all 5 rounds. And Sean just never let him off the hook. Like he slows down every time he's about to KO somebody and lets them kind of work their way back in. At least they cleared the cobwebs and stuff. And then he pops them again. So I can't count on Sean Strickland to win this thing by knockout. But it's one of those things that it's there. Like it's going to be there for every moment of this fight, that if he wants to, he could probably finish.
Yeah, I would not be if they called and said, "Hey, we need a training partner for Sean Strickland. You want in, Liam?" I'm good, dude. I'm good. I've seen what that guy does in training in the octagon. I'm good. I'm not putting money against him either, unless you've got spinning head kicks. And I did put a small wager on Uriah Hall KO because I was like, man, if anybody's going to get him again at 185, it's the spinning head kick guy. And he didn't have an opportunity to throw it. He got walked around the octagon all night. So. Yeah, I think Sean Strickland, I do think he's a rising contender with real promise. And, I think Jack might be that kind of gatekeeper for the division, keeping out somebody like Edmund Shabazi. And I think that Jack is probably going to be able to bust that door down. But it's just a price game for me. At minus 230, we're almost at that 70% indication. And that's slip on a banana peel territory slightly. So I'd want to do a little bit more in terms of waiting for this weigh-in, seeing how both guys look during fight week before I lay a hammer on the favorite. But yeah, I think that Jack is the side here, or excuse me. My goodness, Sean. Yes. Sean is the side here.
I got you. We're in complete agreement, man. Both of us picking the favorite here on the main event. And hey, speaking of picking the main events, I got to give a shout out. I haven't mentioned it on this show, I don't think at all, but a lot of you may know my absolute number one guest, the fan favorite, MMA Lock of the Night. Everyone always raves whenever he comes on the show. We've started our own podcast. It is the Deadlock Podcast, and we do it bi-weekly. This is a Deadlock week, so on Wednesday, head over to MMA Lock of the Night's channel, and of course, I will be picking the main event for the Deadlock Challenge, and I will be staying on the Sean Strickland side. Of course, we got to have a little bit of drama. Thank you for the donation. Tajik, always supporting the betting community, but he simply says Jack wins. That always sends a chill down my spine when Tajik is the one with the hot take on the big underdog. Thank you for the support, Tajik. We appreciate it. And I am definitely nervous about my pick now. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. Next fight coming up, we've got Punahele Soriano taking on 209 acolyte Nick Maximov. This is the new Diaz brother on the block. They absolutely love this kid. Already here in a co-main event position, which is kind of blowing my mind if I'm being honest here, Liam. This fight, I can't quite wrap my brain around it. It gives me the heebie-jeebies. I don't know what I want to do.
I had to double check twice to make sure this was the co-main event. I was like, wait, no, I misread that. Let me go check again.
Right?
Crazy, dude.
Puna's a minus 200 favorite. We've got plus 165, plus 170-ish on Nick Maximov coming back as the underdog. Puna's 8-1. Nick is 7-0 undefeated. And I mean, Puna trains with Ngannou. Puna hits like Ngannou at 185. Like, he fights the exact same way that Francis Ngannou does. Big power, long reach, explosive. He's durable. He's one of these big Hawaiian warrior types, so it's almost impossible to get him out of there. He forces a technical brawl. He comes forward and he just wants to throw hands, man. He does headhunt a little bit and he's willing to trade. That got him in trouble in his last fight. Dropped his first one to an opponent who kind of matadored him to death in that fight. Definitely the kind of fight that a young kid is going to grow from, though. He can take a lot of lessons from that. You expect him to come back a better person after taking that kind of a loss. He's got a 100% takedown defense rating so far in the UFC, which I think is very important in this particular fight. And he's welcoming Nick Maximov. Now, like I mentioned, Diaz protege made a successful UFC debut against Cody Brundage, a guy who I'm not sure is UFC caliber necessarily, and that was a hell of a fight, man. They went back and forth. He's got this, like, gigantic turtle shell back. He's, like, super hunched over forward with his boxing, and he just unloads giant overhand shots, man. He knows how to use his reach. He's got super long arms. He's going to have a 4-inch reach advantage in this spot. He knows how to shell up defensively, and boy, does he mix up that game well. He knows how to change levels, hit those takedowns, mix in the grappling, and he is nasty from top position or from back position. He can absolutely ride out the backpack, and he's got good, solid ground and pound. This is one where, again, I've got alarm bells ringing off in my head, Liam. When I watch the tape, when I watch these guys fight, the experience goes to Puna. The record goes to Puna. Everything I can see on paper goes to Punahele Soriano. But the UFC is putting Nick Maximov in this co-main event. They are not putting Punahele Soriano in this co-main event spot. I am terrified to lay minus 200 on Punahele Soriano, even though my eyes are telling me that he absolutely should win this fight. How do you see this one playing out, man?
Yeah, I think this matchup might be a little bit binary in the sense that, you know, I kind of want to see what it looks like when these guys wrestle. I have a feeling that Punahele Soriano, based on what I've seen so far, is like a pretty damn nimble wrestler. In terms of his sprawl game is pretty legit, right? Like, Brendan Allen doesn't really have great low entries, but he tried to get to the body lock a couple times. He tried to fire off a double or two, and he never sniffed it, even when Puna was like death gassing. So I was like, I don't know how easy it's going to be to take this guy down. I think he does have a wrestling background of sorts as well. But, you know, I do see the same kind of red flags a little bit that you're talking about, in the sense that, you know, Maximov, he's kind of, you know, a little bit of a weasel in that he hides his head a lot. Like, he makes it really hard to hit him. Even when he's hurt, like, he's very difficult to finish. He buries his head on the low singles a lot of the time. So, you know, that's a tricky guy to fight. It's an annoying guy to fight, right? Every time you try to step in to punch, he's going to drop down. He's going to hit that low single. And now you're back into a wrestling exchange. So I think Maximov, yeah, that's what you want to see from Punahele. But what does Punahele throw? Punahele throws a shit ton of lead hook, rear hand, and he throws both with a little bit of that, you know, arcing style. So I do think that, you know, that gives those openings where somebody like Maximov could try and level change on him, could try and keep entering on these takedowns and just make it a pace thing, because Maximov seems like he can go all day with the wrestling. And that's what I think is pretty impressive about him. But on the other hand, you know, the Cody Brundage fight, you know, it wasn't the clear, decisive win, but it is also a high-pressure situation where he goes from fighting basically nobodies to fighting in the UFC. And so I think that he's shown, you know, growth. He's taken his career development pretty slowly. But this could also be that, you know, you got to take a lesson here, young man, where he can't get the takedowns, and then he's left on the feet with Punahele. And in that case, I think Puna would knock him out, because I think Maximov's striking is a little bit rigid, a little bit stiff. You know, he's got a decent enough shell guard, but if Puna backs you up against the fence and there's not really much more space to move, you know, he really lights people on fire there. And he doesn't hit, like you mentioned, you know, it's not really the shots where guys are going down because they're getting hit too many times. It's like guys get hit and they're like, like get hit by a truck. So I think that Puna is probably going to find the KO shot if he doesn't get taken down here. But, am I in a rush to play the money line? No, I'm not in a rush to lay, again, this is like 67% indication, on Punahele, who just was at a pick'em price and got absolutely walked around the octagon by Brendan Allen. Make no mistake about it. That was not a competitive fight. He lost the first round, which is the round he's supposed to be the most competitive in, and he kind of gassed. So if you believe in the ABCs, say always bet on cardio, like Mr. John Anik, then you are going to be going on the other side here, because Punahele is not the best cardio fighter in the world. But I also think that his cardio is not horrible. He can fight while tired. A lot of guys, if they get tired and they panic, Puna gets tired and he's like, whatever. He's still throwing, and I think he still retains some of that power, but he's the most explosive and the most dangerous early. So live entry season on Nick Maximov, if he survives, that's potential. I think that is something I'm going to look at, especially if he gets rocked, hurt early. I do think he's a tough kid. I do think he will come back out firing off those low singles, hiding his head again. So that's something I'm at least interested in here. But yeah, he might get nuked in the very first round. I see a lot of people saying that, and how am I to push back against that? Puna can do that to good fighters.
Yep, absolutely, man. Again, shout out to Tajik here donating another $5.99. Thank you very much. Hey, any and all donations that come in here through the chat, keep the lights on at Pub Sports Radio. So we always appreciate getting those since we're bringing all the free content. But he's saying Puna wins. So, I'm sorry. He's saying Puns wins. So maybe he thinks I'm funny. I'm going to assume that's a Puna wins, though.
I am seeing people talk about Maximov ends up on his back a lot while attempting takedowns, but that's because he's a jiu-jitsu guy. He's not afraid to look for the sweeps. And on top of that, he fought a heavyweight weighing 209 pounds in the Contender Series. And that guy was like on top of him or whatever, but he stayed in the fight. Even stuck under that guy, he was fine for 15 minutes and was able to outlast him. So, I just think that he's a lot to deal with in the grappling component. And Puna's never been audited there. Brendan Allen just never really had to. He was beating him up on the feet, so he half-hearted level change. He didn't really have to audit him there. I think that, you don't want to be holding the favorite minus 200 on a young guy who hasn't been tested in a certain area, and then he gets audited that night. So I don't know if Maximov's the guy to do it, but somebody's going to try and audit Puna on that wrestling defense because he's a handful on the feet.
Yeah. And I mean, Puna's training out of Extreme Couture. So we got to think he does have that wrestling in his back pocket. But to what level? That's the thing. We just don't know to what level Puna's grappling really is at. So I'm going to go ahead and pick Punahele Soriano to win this fight. I do think that he should win this fight. He's got all the tools to win this fight. But again, when you can clearly tell who the UFC is spotlighting, I'm not going to line up to lay chalk against the guy they want to succeed. I mean, this is the Diaz successor in Nick Maximov, so they want this kid to make a splash, completely staying away. Yeah, shout out to Paul right away, echoing, clear, stay away. Completely agree. I don't want any part of this fight. Maybe a live bet situation like Liam mentioned on this one on Maximov, if you can see him starting to have success with the takedowns, if you can see Puna starting to fade, because we know Nick will be able to go back to that grappling. Final pick though, Liam, which side are you saying is going to get the dub?
Yeah, I would outright lean Puna here, but it'd be a relatively slight lean for me. Maybe okay. Minus 130 here.
We're both leaning to the favorite, not wanting to touch it from a betting perspective. Next fight on the card, Shavkat Rakhmonov takes on Carlston Harris. And this is a fight, folks. I cannot wait for this one. Maybe my sleeper pick here for fight of the night, or at least as long as it lasts, it's going to be fight of the night. This is my violence spot of the night. I am tipping my hand here because I'm not picking a side. I'm going to be looking for, totals once those drop here on this one, because the heat these two guys bring is just something else. And it's funny because we're all super high up on Khamzat Chimaev, but did we totally forget about Shavkat Rakhmonov? This guy is insane. He's the first person to finish Michel Prazeres. And I know Michel Prazeres is getting older, but that's freaking something. He's been in some wars with people. He is just 27 years old. Really tall, really long. I'm going to combine those two, and that makes Tong. Fast hands, long, accurate, very creative striking. He knows how to work in every single range. If you're in that mid-range, he's switching to knees and elbows. If you're at kicking range, you've got spinning heel kicks coming at you. If you're in boxing range, this guy's got a sniper for a right hand. I mean, he is well-rounded everywhere on the feet, and he's got strong grappling as well. He showed that in the Prazeres fight. I thought if this fight hit the ground, he was going to have a bit of a tough time there, but he passed with flying colors. He knows his transitions. He knows how to scramble. His ground and pound is serious. He's got a 100% takedown defense rating so far in the UFC, and he actually took Prazeres down himself. 1-inch reach advantage does Shavkat Rakhmonov have here in this fight. His opponent, Carlston Harris, is a sick grappler, man. This guy is nasty on the floor. Crazy strong body lock, just drags his opponents to the mat where he wants them. And on the feet, he's one of these guys that's got crazy big power and just unleashes because he wants the fight on the floor. So he throws those overhands with reckless abandon, and he is the definition of the club and sub, because he's literally out there clubbing people. Like, you look at when he gets in like that mid-range, he is actually like standing hammer fisting people, trying to just club them and rock them so he can get them to the floor. And then he's got those long limbs so he can hook up any type of submission that you're looking for. All of the chokes, the triangles, like he can hit you with something from anywhere. This fight is not as simple as striker versus grappler, but it kind of sets up that way, where you would think Carlston Harris has the advantage on the ground. Shavkat has the advantage ever so slightly on the feet, but based off what we've seen in their last couple of fights, they both know how to operate in that other space. So like I said, not quite that simple. Shavkat is a -225, -230 favorite. You can get Carlston Harris as +190, +200 on the underdog. And man, this is a spot where if Carlston Harris clubs Shavkat, ends the hype, chokes him out in 15 seconds, I am not at all gonna be surprised. Liam, talk to me about this awesome fight, man.
Man, this is probably the trickiest fight on the card for me. So this is one I'm going to be digging into even deeper as the week goes on. But, I got to be honest, man. Carlston Harris has been like systemically underrated so far in the UFC. And so as much as everybody likes Shavkat Rakhmonov, I just want to make sure I don't make the same mistake here, right? Because I felt like, he had lost a couple close decisions earlier in his career. He was getting a little bit up there in age. So I was like, I don't know about this Carlston Harris guy as a prospect. But then what we've seen from him is that he's a man after my own heart. His front headlock game is nasty. He's got the Darce chokes. He's got front headlock game. He's just a really serious grappler with a bunch of threats. And he's a violent, vicious grappler. He's always looking for the finish. And he also has power in his hands. And he's a long guy. He's got a good frame for the division. So Shavkat's a big guy. He's got a huge frame as well. And he's done some good work. He beat Jun-Young Park like very early in his career, which I think is something that people give him credit for. He's got the win over Thiago Barriault. And what is it? All finishes too. So it's like, yes, the guy is super impressive, but there are the fights as well where he looks, dare I say human. He just looks like a normal fighter. I'm forgetting the guy's name now, trying to look back at his record to see if it stands out to me. Faroudin Odaliv at Battle of the Nomads in 2018. He was getting sent all over the goddamn place. He was rocked. He was completely hurt. He looked like he could have easily been finished in that fight. And that wasn't all that long ago either, just against a guy nobody's ever heard of. So I think that, as much as he's done good work so far in the UFC, we got to remember that Michel Prazeres fight was a little bit of a gimme, right? He's a lot older, on the way out, clearly on the way out, didn't look the same physically, shell of himself physically, and gets finished, which if it was Michel Prazeres that we know and love and expect, then that's not happening. So, okay, I kind of throw that one out. Then he beats Alex Cowboy Oliveira, which a lot of guys have finished Alex Cowboy Oliveira over the years, right? And, impressive win. He's a lot bigger, right? There's a former 55, I think, in Cowboy Oliveira. I can't remember off the top of my head, but either way, he's not the biggest 170 in the world. And I do think that Shavkat, he takes advantage of guys that can't match him in that grappling realm. Carlston Harris can match him in the grappling realm. I think that he has something to offer on the feet. So, at the steep favorite price, I would have to say it's a dog or pass situation for me personally.
I completely hear you there, man. This is one where, like I said, you absolutely have a live dog on your hands. But I had this debate with somebody in the DMs a little bit earlier today. I'm simply not standing in front of Shavkat Rakhmonov. And I know you mentioned that maybe Prazeres was a shell of himself. Maybe that wasn't the guy that we're all super used to. It's the way that Shavkat beat him. It wasn't like, hey, kid, here's your first test. And he grinded on by him. He went to his first decision. It was a split. He got those rounds. He learned a lesson or two. He wrecked this guy. Like, nobody has handled Prazeres the way that Shavkat handled Prazeres. So that's the kind of thing for me that goes, okay, whoa. Like, this kid may just be legit. But the exact same thing can be said for Carlston Harris. I have not wanted to step in front of that train for any reason either. So I don't want to bet against either of these guys. They are both bet on fighters for me. I see the dog or pass argument. I think from a betting perspective, that makes sense. But like I said, for me, man, this is one where I just want to bet violence. Because if Carlston Harris can't get this fight to the ground, I really believe that Shavkat will piece him apart on the feet. We've seen him hurt and clipped a couple times. No one's been able to actually take advantage of it. I think Shavkat's the guy to do that. And if Shavkat ends up on the ground with Carlston Harris, we have seen what that man does once it hits the floor. And he's got that ridiculous power that he can hurt and clip anybody to get the fight down to the floor. I just think both guys have such finishing upside that I don't want to pick a side. I just want to say this thing's not hitting the judges' scorecards.
Fair play. I think that that's a decent enough way to target this. You know, when we have seen Carlston Harris lose, most often it's been inside the distance, I believe. But, you know, the one thing I'd point out is that he's 7-3 in fights that go to decision, right? So Carlston Harris has been the 15-minute distance. Shavkat Rakhmonov, he has not, right? He's got 14 wins inside the distance, no wins by decision. So, again, it's just like red flag for me potentially is what does that look like over time? Does this guy have a style to win decisions? I think he probably does, but again, you want to see that answered, and we have it. And you're being asked to pay minus 250. So it's not like it's a pick'em price, right? Like if it's a pick'em price and you're saying, hey, you know, I'm weighing this again, but now you're being asked to pay minus 250 and we've never seen the guy win a decision.
Exactly.
That's all.
No, I hear you, man. Exactly. And that's where I am not betting the favorite. I'm going to pick Shavkat to win this fight. But again, I'm going nowhere near that favorite line with my cash. Shout out to my guy, Boston Nick MMA, wanting to know, Liam, how'd you do at your jiu-jitsu match yesterday, man?
1-1, my brother. We lose on the decision in the first one. We come back. We get the decision back. Had some good takedowns. Had a couple close chokes. But, you know, let some opportunities slip. I got better yesterday, and I got bitter yesterday. So I'm going to try and get back in the room and keep working on my skills, get back out there and get another win.
It's what it's all about, man. I love it. Hey, everybody, anytime we do this stuff, a lot of people are, you know, big on the whole couch jockey narrative. You need MMA experience before I'm going to listen to you talk about MMA fighters and where to put your money in. I always have to remind people that I might be a fat, out of shape dad bod at this point, but I actually do have some jiu-jitsu experience. The difference between me and Liam is that Liam can rock his abs right now if he really wants to. He's actively competing and he's a complete badass. So make sure you follow my guest, Liam Picks Fights. Real quick, folks, before we move on to the people's main events, I got to go ahead and shout out our sponsors. Where's the bang, Preston? Come on.
I can't breathe. Pub Sports Radio. Come find us in Southtown 101. Subscribe on YouTube and all platforms where podcasts are found.
Make sure you are tuning in for those live bet streams that we do on Saturdays because they are one hell of a good time. like I mentioned before the little break there, I am joined by none other than Liam Picks Fights. Make sure you follow this man. We are live here on Pub Sports Radio. Smash that like button for me. We got 156 live viewers. Those numbers are headed right back to where we're used to them being. I am so happy Monday Night Football is over. It ruined my live viewer count. Every time we get to football season, pisses me off. I love it. I love football too, but it messes with my show. Next,
I'm right there with you, Clint.
Yeah, and we got Sam Alvey taking on Phil Hawes, and I am so ready for the abuse that I'm going to receive, for the chat section, for the comments. If you've seen South Park, I'm going to be the guy that just leans back and it's like, oh, that's too bad. Oh, I have already locked in a bet on my guy, Sam Alvey. And now I know that is a very controversial take. I know everyone is ready for me to bet and lose money on Sam Alvey because that's the pattern that we have been in for like the last 2 straight years. So I'm hoping that we're going to get a little bit of redemption this week, Liam. And the other side of me making this bet, first off, it's a bet on Sam Alvey. Second off, it is my favorite fade in the UFC, and that is Phil Hawes. Anytime this man is minus 300 or higher, I don't care if it's you, my guy Boston Nick, or me stepping in the cage. I am betting on his opponent if he's minus 350 because he shouldn't be that big of a favorite over anybody. We know Sam Alvey's style. Low volume, big power, skates around the outside of the cage, looks for that big power shot. 81% takedown defense rating. That's kind of the one thing that gets overlooked by everybody recently is the fact that Sam Alvey still, even in his last couple losses, you just don't take this man down. Phil Hawes, while he's got that wrestling background, he's explosive. He's one of these little muscle monsters. He can kill people in that first round. He is dead by the time the third round comes around in every single fight because whether he's going for takedowns, whether he's throwing big wild bombs, he uses up that gas tank, fills himself up with blood, tires out, slows down, and we've seen the opportunity for him to get clipped and KO'd multiple times, cashed in on Chris Curtis being able to pull that bad boy off last time. Sam Alvey's back is against the wall here, Liam. You know, this is one of those spots where people making memes about how they don't know how he's even still with the organization. He's got the naked photos of Dana White on his phone. Like, we don't know why he hasn't been cut at this point. And this is that spot where you go, okay, like, you can't call judges robbery against a guy like Phil Hawes. He's either going to kill you or you're going to kill him. I'm rolling the dice at plus 280 that Sam Alvey's the one that lands the bomb on a guy whose durability is questionable, who gets tired, and who just got knocked out back in November, and that can't be good for your chin concerns on a short turnaround. So I am going right back to the well, man. Give me Sam Alvey.
Man, you know what's so funny, Clint, is I've been losing that money right alongside you on Sam Alvey. And, you know, no, not alone. And I think that there's been merit to it, right? And the reason why we're betting is because we watched the tape, right? We're not just looking at the Wikipedia. And so we've seen that Sam Alvey almost knocked out Dawodu Jung and he's rocked Ryan Spann. And so at 205, Alvey was like getting some work done, even in these fights he was losing, because he's a little bit tricky. You know, he's one of those guys who operates with his power hand as his lead hand. So oftentimes he's keeping that thing ready to go, locked and loaded, and it's a short hook and it catches you on the chin. And I think that Phil Hawes, you know, it's going to be a fight IQ test for Phil Hawes. Is there a path to him looking minus 400 in this fight? I struggle to see it, but I can see potentially, you know, he stays on the outside, throws some leg kicks, makes Sam Alvey move, throws some leg kicks, and then gets one takedown per round and just tries to lay on top of him. You know, I do think that Sam Alvey has had the benefit of defending takedowns from less physical wrestlers than Phil Hawes. You know, Nasruddin Imavov, I rate as like a pretty good fighter who I think is going to make waves in the middleweight division. But, you know, Phil Hawes was able to stifle him by basically just running his feet and pressing him into the fence. And Sam Alvey can get pushed into the fence. He's just pretty good at staying upright against the fence. He fights a lot of his fights skirting along that outside of the line. So Sam Alvey, we know what he's going to do, guys. He's going to back himself onto the fence and just throw a couple of those, short lead hooks. And one of them could definitely knock out Phil Hawes. So if you want to play Sam Alvey, I think the way to do it is probably Sam Alvey inside the distance. You can get that at plus 550. And to be honest with you, that's a little tempting. I'd have to drive to Jersey to play it, but it's plus 525 for Sam Alvey knockout on Bet Online right now. And Sam Alvey inside the distance plus 550. That's something that's at least a little interesting to me. I know Sam Alvey's not that great a fighter, but people are thinking of this as like the prospect versus the gatekeeper. And this is like a 33-year-old versus a 35-year-old, and both of them are kind of on the skates. Losing to like these, I don't want, like, they're just like the mid-range guys in the division. They're not the guys breaking through to this top 15. Maybe Chris Curtis is going to be a guy to do that, but I'm just saying, like, a lot of these guys are like the journeyman veteran, solid, but not standout fighters. And he's getting, finished in those fights. So I think that, it's anybody's matchup here. Obviously the favorite should be Phil Hawes. I'm not going to say Sam Alvey should be favored in a UFC fight because that's not true. But Sam Alvey as the play here at these huge underdog prices, man, I understand why people will go back to the well with him one more time.
I have to, man. I have to. It all comes down to the damn line. And that's where people give me shit for dog hunting. People give me shit for chasing these big plus lines. But again, like you said, man, you go back and you watch those fights. You watch the tape. Like, Sam Alvey was in and or won several of the fights on this losing run. And I honestly believe that's why he is still with the UFC, is that Dana White has a pair of eyeballs himself, because Sam has legitimately been robbed more than once. Now, I cannot whatsoever defend him against Wellington Turman. That was the worst performance he has had in his recent run. It was a god-awful fight. He didn't do anything right, and that's where it's a little concerning to see that be his last one. But Phil Hawes, make no mistake, is not a prospect. Phil Hawes is not a young up-and-comer. This is a fighter who's been around, who's been at multiple different gyms, who has basically peaked. I think we're seeing the finished product of Phil Hawes, no matter what he might say in interviews. The guy is who he is at this point, and you're never going to fix the durability or the cardio concerns at this stage of his career. Sam Alvey's not plus 280 against this kind of guy. Like you said, maybe minus 150, minus 160. Of course, the books got to protect themselves. It would be a landslide of Phil Hawes money if that was actually the betting line. But you got to take Sam Alvey at this price.
I tend to agree. I think it's a dogger pass situation. I'm certainly not going to be laying my money on Phil Hawes minus 350, but I think Hawes wins the decision more often than not. That's what I'll say. If you want to take a decision only on Phil Hawes, I actually don't think that's the worst bet in the world, because Sam Alvey, somebody mentioned it, his volume is terrible. His optics are terrible. He backs himself onto the cage and he's low volume. The question is, can he knock you out? Yes, he absolutely can. And that's how he steals rounds too. That's how he gets 10-8 rounds and stuff, but gets to those weird draws. I think, Alvey's pretty damn finish reliant at this point in his career.
I completely agree. I also think that Phil Hawes' style lends to being finished. He's got two options. Either he needs to get in and get into a slugfest with you, or he needs to get close enough to you to wrestle you to the ground. And again, we mentioned the gas tank, so he's going to do one of those two things explosively until either he gets you down, knocks you out, or ends up on the canvas himself. So here we go, man. I mean, it might just be another, drop in the hat for me in the tale of Sam Alvey, but I'm hoping to get some of my cash back on Saturday instead. Next fight on the docket here, man. We've got Bryan Battle taking on Tresean Gore. And a couple of you may recognize these names because this is probably what should have been the finale of the Ultimate Fighter Season 29. We've got Bryan Battle, who was the Tough Finale winner. They call the man Pooh Bear, which is one of those fight nicknames that you just got to kind of love, even though it's awful. This guy submitted Petrowski on the show. Everyone's BJJ lumberjack darling that they absolutely love. He tapped the man. Like, that shows some solid grappling experience there. And you know what? He's one of these volume guys. He thrives on heart. You can't get him out of there, and he digs deep. and just volumes your ass up the deeper the fight goes. He attacks with solid elbows. He's got a big body kick, constant volume, constantly in your face. Tresean Gore, 3-0 as a pro, and gets into the Ultimate Fighter. Dude, we don't see 3-0 fighters in the UFC anymore. Like, you go back to, the first or second season of the Ultimate Fighter, and 3-0 fighters were all over the place. These days, you got to be, 6-1, 7-2. Like, they don't let 3-0 fighters into the UFC these days. So the fact that he got his shot on the Ultimate Fighter, was looking like he was headed for the finale of the Ultimate Fighter, and now is a UFC rostered fighter at 3-0, that speaks to what the UFC thinks of Tresean Gore. But the problem for me is that he's another one of these tank-style fighters. Incredibly explosive, well-muscled, kind of reminds me of like a Yoel Romero. Explode and reload, low volume wings, big power shots. He does like to attack the legs and the body, but he's mostly looking for counters. This line, Liam, simply does not make sense to me. Now, I have not bet it yet. I actually was going to kind of avoid this one because I got my fill of low-level MMA last week and got burned for it, but it's getting to the point where I'm probably going to have to take a bet on it because I can't stand this price. Gore is between -160 and -175. Everybody and their mom is just piling in here on Tresean Gore. This is the guy who didn't make it to the finale because he got a knee injury that sidelined him. This is the guy who, is super low volume and is losing the fight until he wins it. And he's being settled in here as a -175 favorite. I don't get it. You can get +130, +145, as high as +145 out there on Bryan Battle, who's the guy who did get his first fight under the bright lights, the guy who has 4 additional fights worth of UFC level experience. I don't get why people are rushing to back Gore at this price tag, Liam. Am I missing something? Am I crazy? Clear this one a bit up for me.
This is a tricky one, right? Because Tresean Gore, we kind of just have less data to work on for the guy. He's not been around recently, right? That's the whole problem. He was supposed to finish out the show. He looked like the odds-on favorite to win the show during the show, and then he doesn't get the opportunity. Bryan Battle finishes Gilbert Urbina, which, by the way, Tresean Gore did too. So it's like they both have the same recent win. It's like I bet Bryan Battle when he was going to fight Gilbert Urbina. I thought that was a very winnable fight for him. He gets the job done. Obviously, the Petroski win has aged pretty well, but Petroski is pretty inexperienced, kind of has left some gaps in some of these fights. And, he's a really, cardio, teetering on the edge of being unacceptable kind of fighter. Petroski has had those lapses in cardio, and I think Bryan Battle works at a really high rate. He's got a high pace. And so that's what's going to be interesting here is like the battle between the pace and the power. I think that Bryan has also made some mistakes, though. That Petroski fight was greasy. It's not like he was like dominating Petroski. He was getting his ass kicked at points in that fight, giving up bad positions. He's just a tough guy, and he works through bad positions, and he seems like the kind of guy who will fight for your money, right? So when people are backing underdogs, I understand why they're looking at that side. The early money, he opened up about -135, and early money came in on Bryan Battle, so it closes about -125. And then, like you mentioned, Clint, there's just been this avalanche. I'm guessing as it opened up on more books, people remember, especially if they watched the show, that Tresean Gore was supposed to win the show.
And they're going
I didn't watch the show, but I remember for the Ultimate Fighter finale, I went through and just watched all of the fights. I still haven't seen the episodes, all the fights in one day. And I was like, both guys could win the fight. That's how I felt about it. But I did feel like Tresean Gore should be a slight favorite. So I kind of agree with where the opening odds were, right? -125, +105. That sounds about right to me. Tresean Gore, but he's coming off that injury, like you mentioned. Do I want to back him at Shaw coming off the injury, not having seen how he's going to look in the comeback fight? No, I don't necessarily want to do that. So as the price goes out, I'm going to wait and see what happens. If we can get where the Tresean Gore number is -220, something like if it just keeps running, I'm probably going to have to get on the Bryan Battle side. But I also don't want to get out ahead of my skis here. If the money's going to keep coming in on Tresean Gore, there's no reason for me to hop over my skis to bet Bryan Battle. So I think this is one where I'm going to kind of wait and see how it plays out. Maybe we get some more information over the course of the week, and the line will get a little bit sharper, but the limits will open up. So people, I would just tread a little bit lightly here. I want to see how Tresean Gore looks physically, coming into this fight. Again, I think that's at least an open question that you got to consider for a guy who hasn't fought in a while.
That's all a fair take, man. And, you talk about how Gore looks physically. I did my Instagram stalking. I did my little fighter creeping. Bryan Battle is taking this fight very seriously, man. He has always been one of these kind of softer fighters. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of this is genetics. Not everybody can look like William Knight does. Some of these guys are just built differently, and Bryan Battle looks to be in the best shape of his career from what I'm seeing. And I know that being in good physical shape does not always translate to MMA success, but for a guy that relies on volume and cardio and looks like he's coming in here after winning the Ultimate Fighter, being a little disrespected by the general public, thinking that he shouldn't have been the guy to win, that the other guy should have been the guy to win. Like, that's the kind of chip on the shoulder that I'm looking to get behind. And I'm with you. I just want to sit tight and I want to watch where this goes. I've already bet mostly underdogs on this undercard, which is a little bit terrifying considering all the dogs that barked at Bellator that ruined my night last week, thinking that's going to hold true to the UFC this next card. It's a little bit scary. But I think the wider this line gets, the more I want to bet Bryan Battle. Because I'm with you. I think the original line, the opening line, was the correct line. And the wider it gets, the more inaccurate it gets, and the more enticing it gets for me to bet on Bryan Battle. So there's been a little bit of a pushback. It looks like the market moved it back from plus 145 to plus 140. So we're not the only ones seeing this. Now I just got to see where it goes and see if I'm interested at plus 130, plus 140, or if I feel like maybe leaving this one alone. It's never wrong to pass.
Fair play. And, I will just say Tresean Gore, when I just did that quick little Instagram stock, he's, he looks good himself physically. He's a little bit more understated, a little bit low key. So that's why I kind of want to see that fight week, how it plays out a little bit. But, I will just say he congratulated Bryan Battle and said, like, I'm going to smoke you basically when we fight. So, he's been preparing for this fight too. And, I'm sure he's perturbed that he did not get that Ultimate Fighter win that he probably thinks he deserves. So I think that's going to be a hell of a battle, man. And that's the conclusion to the show that we really deserve there.
Absolutely.
For those guys.
This is a great fight. Both these guys are great prospects. I can't wait to see this one, man. This will be one that is maybe worthy of a pass, simply so that we can watch and enjoy it and see, who's going to be the legitimate tough winner, the champion of the season. Like, you always love those kind of storylines to see who ends up coming out on top.
Yes, sir. Iron on iron, baby. Only one can advance.
All right, man. Next fight coming up, Juicy J, Julian Erosa, taking on Steven Ocho Peterson in a fight that, honestly, I never thought that we'd ever see. When you ask for matchups and who should fight who, this is never a matchup in my life that I would put together. And it's a weird, almost backward step for Julian Erosa after coming in and doing what he did against my guy, Air Jordan. Julian Erosa is a finisher, man. He's 26-9. And he's only gone to decision a handful of times because he just gets out there and wrecks everybody. 11 wins by knockout, 12 wins by sub, only 6 by decision. This man loves his dark choke coming off that round 3 submission of Jordan. First man to ever finish Charles Jordan, which stands out massively to me. We do have to recall, though, he missed weight coming into that fight. That was a big deal to me because Julian Erosa is a guy who's been a little bit chinny. That durability has been a little bit suspect. Misses weight, is able to take the kitchen sink from Jordan suddenly because he's not quite cut himself all the way down to the limit. And then he ends up having the better gas tank, pulls off the submission win. I need to see this guy on the scales. That's all it comes down to, is I need to make sure that Julian Erosa hits that limit and what kind of condition he does it in before I can even consider putting any type of money on him here. But what he does is just all-out aggression, man. Big power, winging hooks, good Muay Thai, strong power knees. I mentioned that Darce choke. He's got a slick, nasty ground game. He's got a 50% takedown accuracy. When he goes for those takedowns, he tends to land them in a pretty high frequency, but an only 58% takedown defense. And I think that speaks to his comfort level of going to the ground. He loves to go to work with his jiu-jitsu. He's not exactly scared of getting into a grappling match. Ocho Peterson 19-9. He was 2-4 in the UFC before a really long layoff, and then they brought him back as a sacrificial lamb to chase Hooper. Many of us, myself included, bit on that, thinking that Hooper was going to be able to take this guy out, thinking the game probably passed him by. He just wasn't going to be up to it. He spoiled the party for all of us. Cost me a little bit of money. Peterson came out and did what he does. But honestly, man, he's never been anything more than just kind of a journeyman fighter, in my opinion. Ocho Peterson doesn't do anything that overly impresses me. He's got a solid grappling base, good, strong defensive grappling. He showed that off against Chase. Chase had him in a couple of suspect spots a couple of different times, and he was able to wiggle his way out of both, or all of those. Sorry, not both of them, but I think he's only been knocked out once. So even though he gets into these fights, he has been exceptionally durable. Most of his losses, 8 of them coming by decision. So if anything, we can count on Steven Peterson tanking damage, coming back, and going to war. I just don't think he has anything for Julian Erosa from an offensive standpoint, unless we're counting on the bad chin of Juicy J so that he gets his win condition there. This is a sketchy ass spot, in my opinion. Julian Erosa is a minus 280 favorite. That line is currently being steamed. I see it as high as minus 350 out there in the market. You can get Ocho Peterson plus 225, plus 260. And man, one of the things, now I'm bleeding units right now. Like, the betting is not going well right now. But one of the rules that I've held to that has actually kind of helped me save some money is that you don't bet on bad gas tanks and you don't bet on bad chins. So as much as I think that Julian Erosa is the rightful favorite, as much as I think he wins this fight pretty much anywhere it takes place, I cannot lay minus 350 on him. I cannot parlay him with that liability of his chin, because even someone like Ocho Peterson can clip this guy and put him down.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you, Clint. I think that Juicy J is the better fighter here. Just plain and simple. I think he's a little bit more diverse. I think he fights at a little bit of a higher pace, and I think his offense is a little bit more to deal with. But with that being said, Steven Peterson's kind of, like you mentioned, a guy who not afraid to get in the pocket, not afraid to get into exchanges. Even in the grappling exchanges, look competent with Chase Hooper. So I don't think he's, I don't think he's a slouch in that department either. I struggle to see where my investment potential is in this fight. You know what I mean? Like, when I look at the total, I'm like, Steven Peterson tends to go over. He tends to be, a fighter that goes to decision. Whereas, you see Julian Erosa, I think 20% of his career fights have gone to decision, not a very large amount. Yeah, and he will find that late finish too. He's like a dog on a bone. If he sees that you're slowing down, like Charles Jourdain, he's gonna come after you. And I think that that's a possibility here. Maybe Julian Erosa gets this done down the stretch. If I was trying to get crazy with the props or something, look for something to maybe bite into, Erosa round 3 or decision would probably be the one I would look at to just see if there's a decent plus number there. Because I do think that, he hits with a bunch of different tools, but Steven Peterson's pretty damn tough. So you're going to have to hit him a lot of times to get him out of there. And I would trust that he could probably make it through the early portions of this fight. But I don't know. I don't know how this fight looks down the stretch. I feel like it's going to be Juicy J pulling away on volume and probably busting him up.
Yeah. I think I agree, man. I got to pick Juicy J, and you've always got that puncher's chance in MMA, and especially with somebody whose chin's been cracked multiple times, I've got that fear. The price is all wrong for me to try to get a piece of somebody that's that chinny. So if anything, this is one of those weird ones, man, where I almost would think I would bet the over 1.5, but the under 2.5. Like, I feel like, we're staring at that third round spot, kind of like you mentioned. I think I just need to avoid it because I don't have a great read on Ocho. And while I think I do have a pretty good read on Juicy J, and I think he's going to win this thing, I'm probably going to look in hindsight and be like, well, of course he just steamrolled and won. Why wouldn't I parlay this, man? Like, I just can't do it. I'm not a mind reader. Don't have a crystal ball.
He's been knocked out too many times, Clint. He's been knocked out too many times to back him at this chalk price. It's just plain and simple, guys. He's been knocked out too many times by 5 and 4 guys on the regionals. Like recently in the UFC, he's just been knocked out too many damn times.
buyer beware. He should win this fight. If you guys do the parlays, of course, I will do my degenerate parlay where I put every single fight on the list and hope I cash a giant ticket. I will be putting Juicy J on that parlay, but he is the potential bed shitter of the week when it comes to those massive favorites. So just be careful out there, everybody. Don't go too hard parlaying that minus 300. Next fight up, man, we've got Miles El Chapo Johns taking on John Sexy Mexi Castañeda. Gotta say the name, one of the best fight names in the business. And this is another really, really good, really underrated fight, in my opinion, man. Miles Johns, 12-1. John Castañeda, 18-5. Miles Johns is honestly like my doppelganger, my UFC doppelganger for Tony Gravely. Every single time I run into one of these guys, they come in pairs, man. Like there's always another guy that's almost identical to them. Like Miles John, Tony Gravely, the two Billies. You know, you've got Billy Q and the other Billy, Algio, that fought the other day. Like there's always two guys that styles just kind of blend in my brain, and I feel like they're the same person. He's one of these evolving Dana White Contender Series guys. You know, if you got on the train, you faded them early, maybe you've got a shot to take them out, but now they're starting to work out. Now they're getting that high-level experience. Now they're training with the best guys, and he's starting to turn into a competitive UFC fighter. He's got some seriously hard leg kicks, a long, stiff jab, and he's another dude that puts everything into everything. He's looking to take you out with every single shot. In his last fight, he chopped down Dos Santos with those leg kicks, absolutely murdered his legs. The fight before that he won, he made Kevin Natividad do a backflip with an uppercut. Like when this guy unloads, the power is ridiculous. He's got a 92% takedown defense rating, and in his regional fights, he has a split decision win over Adrian Yanez. We talk about fights that age well on people's records. That one is aging very, very well for him. Now, John Castañeda took a little bit of a different approach to his career. He was on the Mexican regional scene, Combates, working his way through there. Lots of movement, this kid. He likes to play the outside, but he's another one that constantly touches his opponent. Like I've noticed, he kind of flips his leg out there for these little leg kicks. They're not overly damaging. They're kind of reminding you that they're there. And then whap, he goes high with the head kick. Like all of a sudden, out of nowhere, you're thinking he's coming for your low calf, and you've got a shin in your ear. This guy's got fast hands. John Castañeda is winging big power hooks on clinch breaks that hurt people a lot. I've noticed. I love when he does that. He likes to attack in combinations, and he's got some decent wrestling in his back pocket. He was just recently promoted to BJJ brown belt, so we know he's taking his well-rounded MMA game very seriously. And the big piece about John Castañeda, man, he's a gorilla. He's got a 5-inch reach advantage. He's one of these guys that, like myself, like I know you can't tell because I'm sitting, but like my arms are ridiculously long. He can scrape the ground standing upright with these things. His arms are ridiculously long. I bet John Castañeda here, man. I think this line is a bit insane. I feel like this is a 50-50 fight, and we're getting plus 200 on the underdog. Minus 220 to minus 250, somewhere in that ballpark on Miles Johns, and then plus 180 to plus 200 on the underdog here. It does look like I'm not the only one taking a stab on Sexy Mexi because that line is dipping. And yeah, man, I took a 1-unit shot on John Castañeda here. I also think it's potentially a good live betting spot because there's a decent chance that Miles Johns is going to win the first round, and then Sexy Mexi kind of works his way back into it. I like the underdog here. Like I said, I think this is a 50-50 fight. I think these guys have comparable records. When you look at some of the guys that John Castañeda has fought, it's not a bad level of competition. The recent guys on Miles Johns' record, yes, they were UFC fighters, but I mean, you go back a couple of weeks, and I mentioned Kevin Natividad. Dude, I bet Kevin Natividad against Miles Johns. John Castañeda is who I thought Kevin Natividad was. So I feel like I have to make this bet, getting a better number on the better guy who's got more of a chance to win. So I know you mentioned you like some dogs on this card, Liam. Tell me we're syncing up here on this one.
So, this is a fight that I would say, to align with your point, I consider dog or pass, right? I haven't gotten to the window yet on John Castañeda, but I've definitely been considering it. Right? Because I took my notes on John Castañeda today, and there's a lot to like, right? The Marcelo Rojo fight, he stays in the fight. He stays in the fire. He's able to break him down the stretch. He's able to find that submission. That was an impressive win. We've seen Marcelo Rojo kind of break in that third round in the UFC, but John Castañeda was able to do it on Combate. That's a UFC level win, virtually. So, hey, all credit to him there. Then he gets matched up with Nathaniel Wood, which is that's like a ranked matchup right off the rip. Not a very easy fight for somebody, to break into the division. So he loses that fight, and he lost it cleanly, but he competed the whole time. I don't think he got badly hurt at any point. He was able to stay in the fight. It was just a clean 30-27 in a fight he's supposed to lose, right? I think he was like plus 330 underdog or something there. Massive underdog, right? And for good reason, right? That was a fair price. And then you see he comes in against Eddie Wineland as well. And I want to say he was the dog there. I can't remember, but, Eddie Wineland, a little bit older, a little bit longer in the tooth, keeps his hands down at his sides. And Castañeda was honestly looking beautiful in that fight. Danced around him. He switched his stance pretty fluidly. He looks like he's getting better from his regional scene as well, because he didn't used to have that fluid striking and that fluid movement. It's getting a lot better. He's got that wrestling in his back pocket. I don't think he's going to be as quality as somebody like Miles Johns is. Miles Johns is a pretty damn good wrestler, right? We've seen, like you mentioned, that Adrian Yanez split decision wasn't because he's throwing hands with him, guys. It's because he was taking him down and pushing him into the fence more accurately. That really could have been anybody's fight. It was 49-46, 48-47, 47-48. And I think that, Miles Johns, he was in his hometown. Everybody's like, yeah, Miles, every time he does anything, yeah, double, oh my God, like people cheering for wrestling, guys. That doesn't happen. So it's like all his friends and family influenced the judges a little bit, because Yanez did, on Pat Militich's scorecard, win a couple of those rounds as well. So I think Miles John's the deserving winner there, but it wasn't like he outboxed him, outclassed him. He's kind of fought a low level of competition so far in the UFC. Mario Bautista got knocked out by Trevin Jones, hasn't been seen or heard from since. He's got a fight scheduled. I'm interested to see how he looks in that one, but he kind of got outstruck and beat up by Trevin Jones. And this is a guy who outstruck Miles Johns pretty easily, and knocked him out with that intercepting knee to the head. Miles Johns, a lot of times he's dipping down, he's keeping his hands here. He also leaves himself open to those left hooks, because he's constantly bringing his hand out here and pumping it. So I think that John Castañeda is live to catch this guy with a hook. But I also think that, Miles Johns is pretty damn good at pressing people into the fence and negating fights from happening. He is good at that. He's strong. He's beaten Levi Moles as well, another guy, quality prospect on the LFA scene. I just have some question marks at the price tag. That Kevin Natividad knockout, I know you pointed out that it was beautiful, and it was, but it was also completely illegal. If nobody saw it, he's grabbing the glove with one hand, and the other hand, he's just bombing him with an uppercut that he can't block. It's like, yeah, that poor Kevin Natividad, that was like a brutal knockout. And what are they going to do? Wake him back up and be like, Kevin, no, that was illegal. You won the fight. It's like,
you won the fight, buddy.
Exactly. They just had to call it for Miles there. But I mean, that was a little cheap. And, the most recent win, that was kind of a little bit of a gimme fight for Miles Johns, or so it would appear. So, I think Anderson Dos Santos is like a journeyman, limited, didn't have great head movement, didn't have great movement at all, stood there, very stationary target, easy to hit, punching bag, right? And this is not what you're going to get from Castañeda. He's a lot more mobile than that.
Didn't do anything different either. Ate the leg kicks that everyone could tell were going to affect him and just kept coming forward.
Yeah, and what also was a concern for me there is that Miles Johns, he kind of, he picks and chooses with his shots, and he mentioned after the fight that he does it on purpose. So it kind of perplexes me. Instead of mixing in all his attacks, he likes to pick certain strikes that he wants to try and use in that fight. And that just limits his offense. So he's only throwing hands to the head or kicks down low. And against a more varied striker, that's going to be problems. They're going to start mixing in things. John Castañeda, part of the reason I like your dog shot here, and I think it's live, and I might get down myself, is that, we've seen John Castañeda likes to grab that collar tie and fire knees every time somebody's trying to push away from him or something as well. And, we see it. Miles Johns dips his head down a lot. He likes to wrestle a lot. He likes to get in close. And it was, pretty low level, like kind of small cage. I wonder how the size of the cage affects this fight as well. That could be a potential advantage on the side of Miles Johns. But I do think that, John Castañeda, he doesn't look like a slouch to me on the ground either. And one of those guys who's going to keep fighting from his back, try and get back to his feet, pop up, seems to have pretty decent cardio. So I totally understand the dog shot here. I think it's a dog or pass situation.
All right. I will take it. I will take the endorsement on the dog shot here. I'm picking Castañeda outright as a plus 200 underdog. Love the spots, love the shot, love the reach advantage. The next fight we've got coming up is, damn, man, I love dumpster diving. This is such a good card. Hakeem Dawodu taking on Mike Trizano, another Ultimate Fighter veteran in the house, and then Mean Hakeem himself. This is an amazing fight. If you guys haven't watched any of their fights recently, do yourself a favor. Go back, have some fun, rerun some of these tapes here. Hakeem is 12-2-1. Mike Trizano 9-1. Hakeem is coming off of being absolutely mauled by Movsar Evloev. But I mean, who isn't going to get grounded and mauled by Evloev? That's what the guy does. Dawodu, to his credit, never accepted position, always forced the scrambles, always tried to get back up to his feet. There's just nothing you can do against Evloev. The kid is special. Gets taken down, excellent get-up game. Hakeem throws everything with bad intentions on the feet. They call him Mean Hakeem for a reason. Those leg kicks, man, he fires so hard on the leg kicks. But he does rely on his chin a little bit, in my opinion. We've seen him get rocked. We've seen him get hurt. He is hittable. He drops his hands when he goes to implement his own offense, and it leaves him wide open. If you look through his run, he's actually surviving this UFC run, this incredible record of his, on split decisions. And in my opinion, that's a bit of a red flag. He's got a split over Bochniak, a split over Arce, and a split over Tuhugov. Now, none of those are bad names. None of those are bad fighters. So it's okay that he's fighting competitively with them. But when you see guys winning split, it's like Angela Hill. Eventually, one of those is going to go the wrong way. You can't always skate by on a split decision win. Hakeem's got a 67% takedown defense rating, so like I mentioned, he got a little ruined by Evloev in that area. 2-inch reach advantage here, and Mike Trizano comes in here. This is another forward pressure fighter. This is going to be a car crash. Two guys that do not take steps backwards are going to meet in the center of the cage and throw down. This guy trains with Hurricane Shane. He's one of the most ridiculously durable fighters we have ever seen. He doesn't get hurt. He doesn't get knocked down. He just keeps on walking forward and implementing his offense. This guy walked down Klein, who was everybody's darling, the head kick king himself, and he forced him to become a wrestler. Like, what Trizano was doing to Klein made him go for the takedowns. This guy's got good feints. He sets his opponents off on the defense that way. He has excellent head movement, strong body kicks. He likes to work the body of his opponent. He's not just a headhunter. He's got a very active, stiff jab. And he has one hell of a right cross when he decides to sit down and let that thing come down the pipe, man. He was damn near to finishing Klein in that third round in his last fight. He's another one of these guys that just kind of volumes on you throughout the fight and gets more and more dangerous the later the fight goes. He starts sitting down on those punches more and more and more later. He's got a 71% takedown defense. Let's be real. Neither of these guys are shooting for takedowns. I fully expect a 15-minute slugfest as long as this thing lasts. And honestly, Liam, I took another solid stance here. I got a 2-unit bet on Trizano at plus 160. I think this line is way wide. If anything, this should be a 50-50. I think Trizano is getting some disrespect. I think Mean Hakeem is a fan favorite at this point. I think that durability is massively in question here. Somebody's going to check him, and someone firing straight down the pipe the way Trizano does is going to be the guy to do it. I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm going to say Mike Trizano by knockout, man.
Clint, that is music to my ears, but let me tell you why. Mike Trizano is my local guy here. Like you mentioned, trains with Shane Burgos, Monroe, New York, stand up, Section 9 wrestling, stand up. But either way, right, I got to be objective about the matchup. You mentioned Ludovic Klein, right, as a big favorite. Ludovic Klein, everybody was liking Ludovic that week. I was on my boy Mike Trizano at that plus 210 figure.
I think I passed. I either bet Trizano or I passed. It was one of those ones where I could smell it, Liam. I could smell it coming.
I understand, Clint. And it's because Ludovic, he's one of those guys with a lot of finishes early. And there's nothing wrong with that if you can do it down the stretch. But we've seen Ludovic slows down a little bit. He's like, F the striking. I'm a wrestler now. And he got some takedowns. But what we saw is Trizano's able to work his way back up to his feet, right? I just did a quick scan over the UFC stats of Hakeem Dawodu never secured a takedown, right? So like you mentioned, fight that's more often than not going to play out on the feet. And for that reason, I think it is, a fight that either of these guys can win. I think Hakeem is probably going to be the one, taking that lead a little bit early. He's a strong guy. I think he throws with a little bit more power. But I do think that Mike is tricky, man. He's clever. He's got a diverse kickboxing arsenal. The one criticism I have sometimes of the Tiger Schulman's guys, and I say with love and respect, is that they get hit sometimes more than I'm comfortable with them getting hit. But they're all tough bastards, and they all come from a gym, in my opinion, where they're sparring, and they're getting good at rolling with those shots, moving with the shots. Because we've seen Mike Trizano in a lot of these fights where he's back and forth, tit for tat, and he's able to win these close decisions. Hakeem Dawodu, a lot of his fights go the distance, right? So the question for me is, do I want to lay the chalk here? Pretty significant chalk price. Again, over a 65% indication on Hakeem Dawodu, who's lost some of these close decisions. Or do I want to look for the guy who's been edging these split decisions as an underdog? It's like, I'm probably going to have to lean with the dog there once again. And Clint, I did, I heard you say plus 160. I was like, man, it's a good price. I go, look, BetMGM hanging at plus 165. I just added that. 1 unit.
Let's go, Liam, jumping in live here on the show. I love it, man. This is one of those spots that honestly, it almost scares me a little bit. I'm unnecessarily confident. Like, I have been watching Hakeem Dawodu, and I know he's one of these super popular betting darlings. Everybody likes this guy. I've been waiting for the day that I can take someone who will knock him out, because I've seen the rock. I've seen the wobble. He gets hit and hurt in every single fight. And I'm just waiting for that guy that's going to be able to finally take advantage of it. I will be sprinkling Trizano round 3. I will probably have Trizano by knockout in one of my Hail Mary parlays, because I think the dirtier this fight gets, the longer it goes. I'm going to bank on the durability of Trizano. That guy's never flinched. Like, you can hit him in the head with your mama's cutting board and he ain't going nowhere. Whereas Hakeem he's done that more than once.
Absolutely. And I think really, man, Hakeem's a great fighter, right? He's not a bad fighter at all. But it's just it's a price consideration, guys. Mike Trizano is consistently mispriced, right? He's just consistently mispriced. You just want to take advantage while he's still an underdog like this, because if he continues to win the fights, he will not be an underdog like this in the future, and you won't be able to play him anymore. You understand? That for me is the betting angle here, where if he wins another fight here, let's say it's another split decision, guys, Vegas is not going to just go, all right, or actually maybe they will, unless the public gets hip to it. So I'm saying Mike Trizano, might wake people up this weekend if he can get a big win here. And, especially if he fulfills your prophecy, Clint, if he gets it done inside the distance, unlike my split decision type prediction, then he's going to make a real name for himself. And I hope he does. Tiger Schulman, stand up, baby. New York, represent.
Liam, I'll be honest with you, man. While I said that I'm predicting the knockout, I'm saying he's going to knock him out. I'm going to bet that round 3 prop. I also might head over to DraftKings and bet the Trizano by split decision prop, because they offer the split decisions on DraftKings. And as we have seen in the past, every single time Hakeem is in one of these tight competitive fights, he goes to a split decision. So they're going to give you something crazy like 20-1 on one of these guys by decision. And we've got a very clear history of this taking place. That might be a bet that I end up sprinkling on my card as well.
Love it. Love it.
Definitely not out of the realm of possibility. All right, everybody, moving the show right along. We're getting down to the nitty-gritty of the card here. Marc-André Barriault, Canada's own, taking on Chidi Njokuani. And this is another fight that I am excited to say that I have another bet on already. Now, Marc-André Barriault is 13-4. Chidi is 20-7. Marc-André, He started 0-3-1 in the UFC. Really rough start to his career and saved his career in his last couple of fights here. Back-to-back wins over Dalcha, Lungiambula, and Abu Azaitar. What's in the bag? This man, if you watch Marc-André Barriault fight, man, you watch one fight. You never need to tape study this guy ever again. He does not change. Every single fight looks the exact same. Marc-André Barriault is this meat and potatoes striker, nice, decent boxing. Reminds me kind of Court McGee. He mixes in the takedowns. He mixes in the wrestling. He's very durable. He doesn't get tired. He never goes away. Just continues working on you. And that's where on that Abu Azaitar fight, if you get a guy that relies on power KOs and gasses out, Marc-André is live for a late finish, or he's just going to work his way back into that fight and take that guy down deep in the fight and get the dub. 70% takedown defense rating does Marc-André Barriault have. His opponent, Chidi Njokuani, is coming off of Dana White Contender Series. Sort of. I say that with a little asterisk because this man is 20-7. He's not your classic Dana White Contender Series fighter here. He's an 8-fight Bellator veteran. He has some serious high-level experience, some big-name opponents over in Bellator. Even though he doesn't have a shiny, pristine record, he has absolutely been battle-tested by some of the best fighters in the world. This guy is always thinking offense. I think he's got over 20 professional kickboxing fights. Like, he's a world-class striker. Very slick striking, good movement, side-to-side, nasty elbows. Just got promoted to BJJ black belt. Congratulations on that, Chidi. He's got 3 losses by knockout, 3 by sub, and 1 by decision. So more often than not with Chidi, if he's losing, it's not going to be by decision. You either get this guy out of there or he's going to be the one killing you. And he's going to have a redonkulous 6-inch reach advantage here in this spot. Liam, I am upset that I didn't do my tape study sooner for this one. I bet Chidi Njokuani. I did risk 1.1 units at -110 on this man here at about a pick'em price tag. I think Marc-André Barriault is just kind of scraping the bottom of the UFC's division to hold his job. Most people would be expecting the Dana White Contender Series fade from me here, where you've got the struggling UFC fighter taking on the UFC newcomer, coming fresh off his shiny Dana White Contender Series win, being overhyped. But I really think the experience and the background of Chidi makes this a different situation. This is not a 6-1 Dana White Contender Series kid that hasn't been under the bright lights. This is not somebody who came off of a flash knockout performance but has never gone past, round 2. I'm not looking at that for Chidi. He's got 8 fights in Bellator. He's fought some of the biggest names that department has to offer. I think he belongs in the UFC, and I think he's a far slicker striker than Marc-André Barriault. I don't have to worry about his gas tank. He's got that BJJ black belt in his back pocket. The reversals, the transitions, the ground and pound, it's all there. I like everything I see from Chidi. Pick him price tag. Give me Chidi Njokuani.
So I think that I get where you're coming from here, and I would pick Chidi outright in this fight. But I do have one concern here, right? And the concern for me in this fight is that he fights at a slower pace, considerably so than Marc-André Barriault, right? Marc-André Barriault is the kind of guy who gets in your face, runs towards you, and throws strikes. And a lot of times it's not that crisp and technical. Sometimes he'll overswing like a spinning back elbow into the cage. Like, he'll just do some crazy shit. But the reason he does it is because he can go all day, right? He just has good cardio. So he is like a cardio pace fighter. And that's the only thing that scares me here is if he is smart, he will be coming out like wrestling shoes on, just trying to press this guy into the fence and take some energy away from him, sap the cardio, take him down. And we have seen that Chidi can lose that fight, right? So like Rafael Carvalho, 29-28 at him across the board with that strategy in Bellator in 2019. The difference, though, is that Rafael Carvalho has the frame to match him, right? He's like 6'3". He's got the same reach, basically. It's like that's a different kind of matchup. Here, you got a significant reach advantage for Chidi Njokuani, and he has long-range tools. That's why I get what you're talking about, right? That rear teep kick to the body, money. He lands it in every fight. He intercepts guys with it. They're like, whoa, I don't want to take that again. And he can do it routinely, right? He switches stances. He can fire it from both stances. He can kick you round. He can kick you to the legs. He can kick you to the head. He's got a lot of diverse threats to offer. And he can put punches and kicks together in very fluid combination. His knockout, I forget. Oh gosh, now I got to look at his record so I don't speak out of turn here. Who did he knock out in such impressive fashion? Christian Torres, he beat up with the shots, and he basically lands the hook and the head kick behind it right in succession, where the camera was so close to him, you can't even see the foot come up until it hits him in the face. Like, you just see that Chidi is like landing a punch and then a foot hits him in the face too. And you're like, wait, was there a third guy in the octagon? It's like Chidi throws that fast. And I think that, he's a lot, I do think he was being slept on early. I think now people are kind of evaluating the price fairly. Chidi is a UFC quality guy. I think Marc-André Barriault, like you mentioned, lower level UFC guy. This is a winnable fight for Chidi for sure. But Chidi kind of has a little bit of that, overconfidence, I would say, in his game at times, where he's willing to take a shot, keeping his hands down because he likes to have that dynamic kicking offense. And that's the only thing that scares me. I think he is the better striker here, and his grappling is sound. It's not bad at all. But I am just worried a little bit about him getting outpaced over the course of 15 minutes and sometimes just leaving that chin hanging up in the air. So once you're laying the chalk, it becomes a little bit different, right? I think you're paying it at pick'em. You're saying, give me these two guys 50-50, I'll take this guy. No problem there. But if the line is flipping completely and Chidi starts to become this outright favorite, I would just caution everybody. It was a great underdog bet. That's why people made it. But there comes a point where there's a tipping point. I do think Chidi, I could get to him being a minus 125, a minus 150 favorite if you're really confident that he stops the takedowns and keeps it upright. But then you just have to say, how proven is Chidi's cardio? A lot of the wins he has are knockouts. A lot of them are when he can get on top of guys and control them. A lot of them are, there's just some variables. He still loses fights. He's not a guy that's impervious. But he's fought a very high level of competition all around the world for years. So I think that he's coming in here as a pretty seasoned pro, and that's why he doesn't deserve that Dana White Contender Series fade that a lot of people want to give. This is a well-rounded seasoned pro, a la Chris Curtis.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you at least can, see that the same way kind of that I do. I can understand the take on Marc-André Barriault. Trust me, I'm the Dana White Contender Series fade guy. So if you're taking that approach with Marc-André Barriault, you go right ahead. That's fine. Honestly, man, I've never been overly impressed with Marc-André Barriault. He was a guy that when he got to the UFC, I just feel like his game is so limited. And like I mentioned, he does the same thing every single time out. It is not hard to game plan for Marc-André Barriault. If I can see that he does the same thing every single fight, so can Chidi's coaches, because you'd have to be blind to not notice that this guy follows the same exact routine and pattern every single fight. So I think that Chidi is going to be live. I think the clinch work, I think the range kicking attack, I think that's all going to benefit him. And as long as he can keep up with the volume or land those harder shots, then the clinch time up against the fence against someone like Barriault, it reminds me kind of Sam Alvey, with those fights kind of slipping away from you because the judges just aren't rewarding the blanket cage control anymore. That's a thing that we're starting to see, the tipping point, where if you're not doing anything offensively with your control, it's not counting for as much. Now, if you take him down, you rough him up, you ground and pound him a couple times, that's a completely different story. But holding somebody up against the fence, they are not rewarding that anymore. And I think Chidi can overcome that type of a fight.
I think that makes perfect sense, man. And, he did pretty soundly out-grapple Souza in his last fight. But, a lot of the times he's taken step-ups he's lost. That's the only concern for me with Chidi. This is a good opportunity, very winnable fight. But it is that little bit of a step up. So I almost want to gather data here. I'm going to do a little bit more diligent tape study of Marc-André because I've only watched some of his recent fights. I'll go back and watch everything he has to offer from TKO. But yeah, I think that Chidi would have been my side, especially as an underdog. But even still, not betting it. But if you said, who do you pick? Chidi Njokuani is my pick outright on this fight.
Okay, we're both picking Chidi. I'm going against one of my routine betting styles, which is a little bit scary. Hopefully it doesn't bite me in the ass. Next fight up, Jason Witt taking on Phil Rowe. And this is another one that I think is I think this is a sleeper fight, man. I think this is one that needs to be talked about a little bit more. So I'm excited we get to break this one down. Jason Witt is a freaking gorilla, man. He's another one of these dudes where it's like, how do you fit that much muscle on a human body? Shouldn't be possible. He's short, he's stocky, he's broad, he's got a back like nothing I've ever seen before. Powerful offensive wrestler. This guy can take anybody down. Kind of baits opponents in for that takedown. Does a good job of timing the level changes. And he's got a nasty top game. If he gets on top of you, you are absolutely in trouble. He likes to hunt submissions from the top. He's got a good offensive submission game. Decent ground and pound. But you know what, man? He's another one of these chinny guys. He's another one of these guys who we have seen absolutely get clipped and put down cold by a grappler, no less. He also tends to slow down. He's coming off his biggest win of his career over Bryan Barberena, the shell of Bryan Barberena. We got to remember where Barb is at kind of in his career at this point. It is not the same guy that we would have talked about, 3 years ago. You go back 3 years and Barb would have had Jason Witt on his ass in about 15 minutes. Well, that's a 15-minute fight. I meant 15 seconds. Sorry about that. And he still almost got it done in the third round. You go back and watch that fight. Bryan Barberena about had Jason Witt out in that third round. He just couldn't quite get that last shot down, and Witt was able to kind of gather himself, get that takedown, and finish grinding out the decision win. I really think he cannot be in the striking realm. He's one of these guys that has to protect that chin. Phil Rowe, 8-3. He's a guy that trains with Vicente Luque and Rodolfo Vieira. Like, you don't get better training partners than that. He's extremely tall and long. He is huge at 170, man. He missed weight in his last fight, and that was, oh, baby, was that a gift. I told everybody when he came in heavy, it's like, lay the mortgage on Phil Rowe, because coming in overweight where there's no durability issue, there's no gas tank issue, he is taking home this dub. He's got some slick Muay Thai striking, good knees. He knows how to use his reach. He's one of these guys absolutely knows what he's doing with his body. He's got these long winging hooks where he just rib roasts people, man. It's beautiful how he tucks and absolutely attacks those hanging ribs there. Knees up the middle, which can catch these wrestler types a little off guard, and a sniping right hand. He's got an active BJJ game from his back, too. When he gets taken down, he can kind of get stuck on his back a little bit, but he doesn't accept bottom. He works his way to the cage. He puts his feet up on the fence. He causes a scramble. He knows his bread and butter is up on the feet. He doesn't try to play jiu-jitsu with these guys on the ground. But one thing is, he is actively working on that jiu-jitsu. Since his last fight in this one, man, he's had 4 different grappling contests. Now, granted, he's lost all 4 of them, but he is actively working on his grappling game, and he's being trained by freaking Rodolfo Vieira. He's gonna get better in the grappling realm, and he has a redonkulous 10-inch reach advantage. No, I did not say that incorrectly. 10-inch reach advantage, almost an entire foot of reach over Jason Witt. The problem is he's got a 50% takedown defense. So this fight becomes almost perfectly binary. If it's standing, it's Rowe. If it's on the ground, it's like 98% Witt. But again, we don't bet on bad gas tanks, and we don't bet on bad chins. I see a lot of love in the betting market right now for Jason Witt, and I can understand. I can absolutely understand. They opened this thing up about minus 165 for my guy Phil Rowe. So you're getting plus 145, plus 140-ish on Jason Witt. And guys, I get it. Looking good coming off the Bryan Barberena spot. I totally get it. But I think that this is that kind of fight that it's just going to take one. I don't see Jason Witt being able to control Phil Rowe for a full 15 minutes. And mark my words, Phil Rowe hits harder than Bryan Barberena does at this point. If this fight gets to the feet, which every round starts on the feet, I really think Phil Rowe is going to find his shot in this spot. I'm tempted now that the line has come down just a little bit. Because of that buy-in on Jason Witt, you can get Rowe minus 145, minus 155. I'm sitting tight. I'm going to see if more Witt money comes in. I'm going to wait because I think I want to buy low spot here on Phil Rowe, but I also want to wait for the Friday show because you've got to see what Phil Rowe looks like on the scales. I mentioned how big he was. He cuts a lot of weight. This is one of these guys that absolutely can have a bad weight cut, but he's also a guy that you have a significant advantage if he comes in 5 pounds over again. So make sure you sit tight. Either way, I think it benefits me because I'm either going to get a better price on my guy Phil Rowe, and then we have all the information we need at the end of the week. What are you doing here on this one, Liam?
Yeah, so I actually I have a bet on Jason Witt here at,
I had a feeling
the
that was
140 tag. Yeah, man, and I'll tell you the reason why. So I don't know if you watched the Fury grappling card that Phil Rowe was on pretty recently, but I actually got some good enjoyment out of it. I thought it was a fun time. Sean Brady got the win over our boy Craig Jones there in the main event. A little bit of modified rule set, but still impressive stuff. And, we saw Phil Rowe get absolutely woodshedded, just like held down easily underneath. And that is the fear with Phil Rowe, is that, he's a guy who's a little bit funky, likes to get in those grappling exchanges, like to try and work his jiu-jitsu. And against a power wrestler like Jason Witt, that's not necessarily what you want. We have seen Jason Witt get submitted. Granted, it was a pretty long time ago. So, barring a submission here, I think Jason Witt's going to be able to get in on takedowns, right? You mentioned the height, the reach. I think that that's all very real. Is it possible Jason Witt gets knocked out? Yeah, it's a Jason Witt fight. Of course it's possible he gets knocked out. But from a betting perspective, what I'm thinking about here is I've got a guy in Jason Witt who's pretty damn strong, physical, low body, low center of gravity. Phil Rowe, super tall, super long, gangly dude. What I expect to happen when that happens is the shorter, stockier guy, if he wants hips, will get them and lift them and slam them. So I think that Jason Witt is going to be able to back this guy up onto the fence and take him down. And he doesn't gas as bad as Orion Kosi, so he might be able to keep that kind of pressure offense going if he gets it going early. Orion Kosi is a reckless brawler with no cardio. Leon Shabazian, a much more precision striker, but much like his brother or cousin or however they're related, doesn't have very good cardio. Right. So it's like, I think that against guys with poor cardio, Philip Rowe is a good comeback fighter, but you also got to think he's got half the professional MMA experience. These guys are around the same age. Phil Rowe's been spending all this time doing grappling matches, and he still gets freaking out grappled, like consistently in the grappling matches, in UFC fights and MMA fights at times. It's like, that's a concern for me. And yes, he's young. And yes, he's taking on all these challenges. So he's probably getting better. But he's 31, so it's shit or get off the pot time. This is a winnable fight for him. But again, this is like Julian Erosa is minus 350. I can't with all the knockouts. I just can't, right? Jason Witt's the underdog. And I think that he has a very clear path to winning the fight. So for me, that's why I'm getting involved on the Jason Witt side. And yeah, people saying this is the Liam tinfoil hat bet of the night. And it very well might be. I don't like the feeling of lining up behind Jason Witt, but Bryan Barberena, plain and simple, is like a more effective cage fighter than Phil Rowe. And like, he has so much more UFC seasoning. Phil Rowe is fighting lower end guys. If you look at what he was fighting before he got to the UFC guys, it's not good. It's not good level of competition. So when he's gotten to the UFC level, like Gabe Green was too much for him. I don't know. I just think people are putting a little bit of faith in him because he's got physical attributes. And I like physical attributes as a basis for a bet. So there's nothing wrong with that. But again, I like that when I'm getting an underdog with a huge reach advantage, and that's my justification. Not when I got to lay the wood on somebody who I know can be out wrestled, can be out grappled, can be knocked out himself. So just something to keep in mind.
I completely get it, Liam. I totally get it, man. And that's where I kind of set it up when I was talking to you about it earlier, that I was like, I get that if that's the angle we're going to take, like, he has a significant path to victory. The grappling is absolutely a problem for Rowe, especially the body lock. And that's something that Witt does really well, is he just kind of body locks people and drags them to the mat. That's there all day in this spot. I just do think that the scrambles eventually are going to grind on his gas tank. I think that Phil will end up getting to his feet, but that's also why I'm not jumping in at minus 175. This is a spot where when I first looked at this card, man, I saw this matchup and went, oh, that's Rowe all day. That's Phil Rowe. But then I looked at the numbers and I was like, what? Like, wait. Okay, hey, hush. I'm sorry, everybody. The dogs are trying to get involved in the show this evening. I don't know what the hell is going on with them, but they never bark this much, so I apologize for the background noise. It's a spot where I really think that eventually Rowe is going to end up clipping him, man. And we're going to end up on opposite sides on this one. I'm going to wait. So if I can get this thing at a pick'em price tag further on down the line, I'm going to take it at that stage. What the hell? I am so sorry, folks. Hold on just 1 second, please. I've literally never had to do this.
I got you, Clint. This should be a good fight, though. Fun fight. Violence to be expected. That's what I'd say.
Violence to be expected 1,000%. Dogs are barking, man. I think you might be on the right side because the dogs are literally barking while you're talking about Jason Witt coming through here. I don't have a bet yet. But Phil Rowe by KO is going to be in one of my sprinkle degenerate Hail Mary type parlays. That's gonna happen. Rowe in round 3 might be a sprinkle because of, like I mentioned, the longer this thing goes, the more I think it favors him. Hopefully we get a decent price tag on that one. And if this thing gets down to a pick'em, I'm taking Phil Rowe. If I can wait for that line to drop down -120, -115, I absolutely will take this shot there. But man, Witt by 15-minute blanket is totally on the table here.
And that's what I think most of his win equity's in. But, I'm not going to be getting fancy with the Witt props in all likelihood. Maybe I would a Witt decision prop if the number was right. But, I think that Witt does have some small finishing potential if he's able to ground him. He doesn't have the most effective ground and pound, but, we just have seen Phil Rowe kind of offer some poor reactions at times when he faces adversity. That's again just a cause for concern when I'm backing somebody at chalk.
Totally makes sense, man. And I think we can just agree that this line is too wide. I don't think that Phil Rowe should be this big of a favorite. You know what I mean? Like, that's bottom line. As much as I do think he's going to win the fight, I want to pick him to win the fight. I want to back him. I like fading Jason Witt. He shouldn't be -170 over Jason Witt, skill for skill. So, definitely some recency bias playing into that. So good luck on your bet, man. Hate to be on the opposite side, but at least we get a little bit of a fun debate for the people. Everybody hates it when we're always just agreeing with each other, so I'll take it. This one, man, I'm going to need your help for this one. Alexis Davis taking on Julija Stoliarenko, which is an absolute mouthful, and I'm just kind of mumbling my way through it. I have no idea how to actually pronounce that name. Alexis Davis, 20-11. One of those women's MMA records where, on one side, it's just not that good. On the other side, she's got a shit ton of experience and she's fought everybody. So, what else do you want? It's a small pool of elite fighters on the women's MMA side of things. So you can kind of make both arguments there for Alexis Davis. 1-4 in her last 5. Very tough, physical. One of these takes a punch to give one type of fighters. Like I mentioned, fought the absolute best. She's got fights with Caitlin Chukagian, Jennifer Maia, Vivi Araujo most recently, and Pani Kenzad, some very sharp up-and-coming fighters. 34% takedown defense, a little concerning. 2-inch reach advantage, taking on Stoliarenko, who is 0-3 so far in the UFC. She's a grappling specialist, but one of these BJJ more than wrestling types where she just doesn't have the takedowns and the positional control that she needs all the time to compete at this particular level. But she's slick, man. From what we've seen with her jiu-jitsu, when she has a chance to show it off before the UFC, she is solid once she hits on the ground. That 34% takedown defense rating is incredibly suspect to me for Alexis Davis. This is another spot for me where, God, I want to pick the favorite, but I just feel like the line is way too wide. Alexis Davis is currently -220. Julia is the +180 underdog, and I think that Davis has to keep this fight on the feet. Now, if she does, she probably runs away 30-27. The same could be true for Stoliarenko if it hits the mat. She can either win by submission or just have the ground control time on the floor. I do not have a good read on either of these women. I don't have a good read on this fight. I have not bet this fight. I'm going to pick Alexis Davis by decision, but I have zero confidence in that pick whatsoever, Liam.
Yeah, so I'm going to agree with you, but probably with a little bit more confidence than you have in the pick, right? And so the reason being is just because we've seen that Alexis Davis has fought a pretty high level of competition over the course of her career, and it's really the higher level competition that's given her problems, right? Alexis Davis has a pretty admirable record, I would say, in women's MMA. She's got wins over Sabina Mazo, Liz Carmouche, Cindy Dandois, Sarah Kaufman, Jessica Ai. So it's not like she's fighting these scrubs. That's not the only win she has. And then Pani Kenzad, her last fight, arguable that she could have won that one. I took a dog shot, I believe, on Pani in that fight, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, I think that,
close.
Yeah, it's a super close fight. And so, Alexis Davis when you look at the girls she's given up the takedowns to, it was back in the day to Cindy Dandois. She gave up a bunch of them in a fight that she won. And then otherwise, she gave up 2 to Viviane Rougeau. She gave up 1 to Ronda Rousey. She gave up 2 to Sarah McMahon. She's not like a scrub wrestler. But what I think is my only concern here is that she's getting a little older, and Julija Stoliarenko, she does look like a pretty physical girl. She fought Julia Avila and Yana Kunitskaya. Those are both pretty physical 135-pounders, in fairness to her. And so she kind of got muscled around. She kind of got beat up. And she wore a lot of damage in that Julia Avila fight before the finish. So, she's kind of been busted up here. I think that this is a fight where, some people I respect are like, ready to drop the hammer. Because of the quality of competition difference and things for Alexis Davis. I'm not quite as confident, but I do think that, she is the deserved favorite here. Julija Stoliarenko hasn't fought that high a level of competition. She's pretty reliant on her jiu-jitsu. I don't know how good her wrestling is, outright for her to get to takedown, to get on top of somebody like Alexis Davis. So, maybe that takedown defense comes back to bite her, but she really hasn't had it tested that much recently, and I do assume that she's, not going to be facing the same level of competition here in Stoliarenko that she did in some of those previous fights. So, yeah, I think that this is probably a favorite or pass spot for me. I bet Stoliarenko as an underdog once and felt horrible about it. So I think, she just is kind of finish reliant. When you look through her record, she's got some arm bars. She has a decent little bit of power, I guess, for women's MMA, but it's reckless striking. It's striking that gets her hurt just as often as she hurts anybody. So that for me is the problem. It's always get one to give one. And I think that, maybe she made some improvements, but it's going to put her in range.
The good old women's armbar from guard. Shout out Paul Shaughnessy over on the Dogger Pass podcast. Yeah, that's on the table here, man. So there's me, and then there's you, and then there's those psychos out there with the hammer. We're all picking Alexis Davis, so at least we agree on that. But the varying levels of confidence here. I'll be going nowhere near this thing except, of course, the degenerate parlay that we most previously mentioned. I'll be picking Alexis Davis as my winner here. Hate that price tag. Now, Marco, no Jan Blachowicz. There will be no slander of my man Jan Blachowicz. He may have fallen a little bit, lost his belt, but my man earned his stripes. Come on now.
Dude, I will just say that I had a -108 ticket on Alexander Rakic, and that number will never come back, I don't think. The books have now seen where the action was heading. I bet Jan Blachowicz opens up like +105, -125, maybe Rakic on the other side. So
Liam,
yeah, that's annoying, but
that is the worst feeling in the world, and the books always get us. I never once have I talked to somebody that was like, oh yeah, I bet this fight, and then when they closed it and reopened it, I got a better line. Like, nobody ever got the better line. Like, we all only ever get screwed when this type of a thing happens. So I am
only me with Victor Henry. Victor Henry, it went from like +365 to +425, and that was actually the reason I got involved. I was like, man, this is just getting absurd.
What a baller call that was, man. That was one that I've said this on my show like the last 3 weeks in a row, man. I don't know what's going on with my not my gaydar, but like my dogdar that's like my internal. I need to bet this dog that, that sensor, the hair on the back of my neck. I keep saying that the favorites are going to win, but the line is too wide. And then I'm not betting the dog. And the dog keeps winning. Like, it's making me really mad because there's like 4 really big underdogs that I absolutely could have cashed on. But someone like Henry, I'm like, I didn't know enough about him. I love me some Hani Barcelos. Like, at the end of the day, he's just going to get it done. It's probably going to be closer than it should, but split decision Hani. No, bet the damn 4-1 underdog. You had the balls to pull it off and got rewarded. Like, that's what I'm missing right now. I need to be pulling those damn triggers.
Hey, dude, shout out to my man Jack Attack, who was in my chat on the show and pushed me over the edge. He gave me the confidence to go with my gut there, which is, I am, again, trying to, pick these fights outright. I had Yanni Barcelos by split decision as my outright pick. But I'm trying to make money too. And if I think it's going to be a split decision and it's plus 425, I got to.
Dude, that's the trick. Anybody who's watching this, who's new to the podcast, who's new to the show, new to betting in general, like the numbers determine everything. It's not as simple as black or white, A or B. If you actually see a fight playing out closely, if you're going to a split and you're relying on 3 moderate at best human beings to decide who won a fist fight, you want the plus money in your pocket. If you flip that coin repeatedly and you keep having the plus side of it, you're going to end up coming out on top. So if you've got a minus 300 favorite that you think is going to fight very closely with his opponent, that's when you bet his opponent. That's how gambling works. That's how you can actually do okay gambling in the long run, not in the short term. Like me, you get your ass bit by taking a plus 550 over in Bellator, but maybe that fight plays out the right way. The next 4 times I roll those dice and I end up catching one of them. So sometimes you just got to sack up and take what sounds like a very risky bet, and it pans out and pays off handsomely. I will get off my soapbox. That's your lesson for the day. Next fight up, Mr. Steal Your Girl, Danilo Marques, taking on Jailton Almeida. And I mean, have we gotten proof? Do we know for a fact that Danilo Marques is the new Mr. Cheyenne Buys? Like, is that because that's the rumor. That's what's been floating around on the internet.
Really? I thought it was Roman Dolidze.
Oh, you're right. It's Roman Dolidze. My bad.
No, you're good, Clint. I was like, damn, I didn't know my man Danilo was getting down like that. I might have to go run and put 10 units on him. Shit.
Two bearded, scar tissue faced up old dudes. I mixed up my there's my doppelganger. I mentioned the doppelgangers that keep on popping up. You're right. It's absolutely Roman Dolidze. I apologize to Danilo Marques and anybody who's a fan of him out there, because yeah, you're right. He's not the guy that would pull that move. So Danilo Marques is 11 and 3. He's 12-3 now because he just TKO'd me. Jailton Almeida, Dana White Contender Series fighter, 14-2, coming in here making his UFC debut. And this is another prime spot for that Dana White Contender Series fade, folks. Jailton Almeida is a whopping minus 400 favorite over Danilo Marques. And the problem with this one, Liam, is that if you put Danilo Marques in a time machine and you let him start training MMA at age 12 instead of age 43, you get Jailton Almeida. Like, he is just the better version, the younger version of Danilo Marques. Marques is 3 inches taller. He's a big, big boy in there. But another one of these gorilla arms, Jailton Almeida has a 2-inch reach advantage here in this spot. They both like to grapple. They both like the body lock. They've both got the submissions. The problem is Jailton Almeida is massively younger than Danilo Marques, and the only wins that Marques has in the UFC are over the 2 biggest frauds in the division, man. He's got a very questionable gas tank, and he relies on that grappling to get him through. All Jailton Almeida has to do is survive round 1, and he's going to have the better gas tank and be able to pour it on. But minus 400, man, for a debuting fighter from the contenders, I can't do it. I can't do it. I made that mistake once with Koski. Never again will I parlay a debuting Dana White's Contender Series fighter to get the price tag down at minus 300, minus 400, just because it looks like he should roll. I'm so tempted, man. Because of the Contender Series fade, because of the experience advantage, Danilo Marques at plus 300 is probably a stupid number, but I can't get it out of my brain that he's only fought the absolute worst that the UFC has to offer. I think 14-2 Jailton Almeida should roll in this spot. Are you sacking up on the underdog, Liam?
Well, Clint, as a matter of fact, I am.
There it is.
I'm on the underdog in this fight, and I have been before, right? So Danilo Marques was plus 200 against Slow Mike Rodriguez. Thank you very much for that free money, 2 units there. And on top of that, right, he was kind of, when I look at Danilo Marques, right, what stands out to me is, he has that win over Khadisi Ibragimov, right? And it's by decision. You're like, man, how do you not finish somebody as bad as Khadisi Ibragimov with the no cardio? But go back and watch the specific. What's that?
Do you remember how hyped people were on Cadiz? I won him back, Liam. I made so much money.
Well, I can tell you, Clint, I actually thought that Cadiz, the only reason he didn't get submitted in that fight is because he completely cheated, dude. He held the fence so hard, like actively, more than once. I was like, are you kidding me? So my man Danilo Maia wasted a lot of energy trying to get these takedowns early and then just had to hold on to him and try and keep close to him, right?
Yeah.
What I think is impressive about Danilo Marques is that when he's in a grappling fight, he feels comfortable. And so we've seen now he's had the Kennedy and Nzechuku loss. Kennedy and Nzechuku put a pace on Carlos Ulberg that he couldn't keep in the striking, right? It's like, yes, Kennedy has ridiculous pace, pretty good durability, doesn't get submitted very easily. Okay, tough guy for Danilo to beat. Also, Kennedy is fucking huge.
Yes.
Jailton Almeida, he's going to have the reach here. He's not going to have the height. Danilo is a big guy. So I think Danilo, he's the older guy. He's a little bit craftier, a little bit savvy. He's got this UFC experience under his belt. And now we've got the guy coming in off contenders. I bet on this guy, Jailton Almeida, as an underdog, folks. So I saw this coming, right? I thought he was going to beat Nasruddinov, who, by the way, it says he was 9-0. He lost in 2018 to some other guy who's not that good, who out-grappled him there. So I think that what happens is, sometimes people run away with this result, right? He barely out-grappled that guy at points. Go back and watch. He loses position. He falls over the top. He's in and out. He's doing this. So, yes, he's got the more modern Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu game. I think that, skill for skill, he's better. But if it's a grappling-based fight, Danilo Marques is going to be able to get positions at times in this fight. Who's to say he doesn't find a submission of his own? He's a crafty old vet. But if he doesn't, what's stopping him from making this a competitive decision over 15 minutes? I don't think Danilo Marques is going to get easily submitted by this guy. So maybe he gets knocked out, right? Danilo's no standout on the feet. You're not going to run and back him based on that. But at plus 325, we're giving him less than a 25% chance. And this is a guy who has wins in the UFC out grappling people. That you cannot say the same for Jailton Jr. He has a win over like a regional level guy who is Russian, so people assume this guy can't ever lose a wrestling match. It's like, it depends on the guy. Not everybody in Russia wrestles, right? More per capita are skilled on average, but not every guy there is like just strapping on the shoes and doing that. Some guys are kickboxers. Look at Slava Borishev, right? So it's like, I think people got to, just do a little due diligence here. Jailton Almeida, talented guy, very solid grappler, but he's going to be grappling a grappler in an MMA fight. That's going to be, anybody's ball game, probably edge the younger guy, maybe even a significant amount. You want to say 65%? Okay. You want to say 70%? Okay. You're going to say he's 80%? It's like, what? I don't know, man. I think it's just getting a little bit out of hand. He was an underdog his last fight, right?
What's that?
He was an underdog his last fight, right? So
dude,
now he should be minus 400 this fight?
That was the thing that jumped out to me. I went back and I looked at his Contender Series fight, and I was like, what was the line on this? Like, I couldn't remember. So I go back and I was like, oh shit, he was an underdog in his Contender Series fight, and now he's a minus 400 favorite in the UFC debut. Dude, you're making a lot of sense, Liam, and I'm the Dana White Contender Series fade guy. Like, I think I might have to join you on this because...
Plus 185 it was, Clint. Plus 185. He was a 35% indication. Now he is an 80% indication against a UFC fighter with wins.
The swing going from plus 185 to minus 450. It's redonkulous, man. And I think you're right. Like, I'm down bad right now. I'm down bad. And this is the exact spot that I was too scared to touch. We just talked about it. I keep saying that the line is too wide, but I'm picking the favorite and the dog shows up and wins. I am 2-0, just like you, betting on my man Danilo Marques. Khadisi Ibragimov, my favorite UFC fade of all time. I bet him there. And then, of course, Slow Mike Rodriguez, one of the worst guys on the roster today. I bet against him there as well. Oh, I'm free rolling on Danilo Marques. I got to do it, man. I'm going to jump in. I'm going to join you. Plus 300 is way too much in this spot, and I just got a little sick to my stomach.
I don't know if you have access, but on BetMGM, you can get as high as plus 325, my friend. Plus 325 on Danilo Marques. That's a wide line.
And why I actually do have BetMGM, but let's take a look at this because I like to use bestfightodds.com. Again, they don't sponsor the show or anything. They're just the best place to track the movement of the lines out there. It looks like the majority of the money is still coming in on Jailton Almeida. We get these little red downward arrows where the money is coming. So believe it or not, we may actually end up getting a little bit better of a line. Oh, never mind. Looking over at DraftKings and FanDuel, it peaked up at about plus 320, plus 300, and is now dipping back down. I see plus 290 over at FanDuel. So yeah, plus 300, plus 325 is probably about as good as we're going to get here. I got BetMGM, so I'll probably be jumping in on that plus 325 as soon as we hop off the show, man.
Best of luck to you, my friend. I can tell you, I'm there. I'm already in.
Oh,
come on in, Clint. The water is just fine.
It does not take much to talk me into a bet when it lines up with so many of my angles. Like, I already probably should have been looking at this one, and I'm just too scared to because I've got a little bit of a recency bias. But that's the whole point, right? That's why we got this line on Jailton Almeida. So. Shit, man. Let's go Danilo Marques. Buckle up, everybody. Last fight of the night. Malcolm Gordon taking on Denise Bondar. And this is another very weird spot, man. I'm just cards on the table, Liam. We can save a little bit of time here. Malcolm Gordon may be the number one worst fighter on the UFC roster besides the discount Figueiredo who he beat in his last fights. Like, Malcolm Gordon gets knocked out by a stiff breeze. Malcolm Gordon gets knocked out by his shower turning on in the morning. Like, this guy cannot take a punch whatsoever. But what he does have is a pretty slick ground game. Honestly, like his grappling is decent. His wrestling is decent. His submission game is really where he shines. I think he only looked that good wrestling, though, because he fought an awful wrestler in Figueiredo who doesn't know how to stand on his own 2 feet. You give him anybody even slightly better, and his wrestling is not going to look that good. Bondar is 16-3, and while I hate chalky debutantes, he's making his UFC debut. He's got a 100% finish rate, which is exactly the kind of guy that you want going up against Malcolm Gordon. This guy likes to move forward. He's got good head movement. He's got these Justin Gaethje style leg kicks. He swings a big power overhand right. Problem is, in a couple fights, I saw him giving up some pretty easy trip takedowns. That was a bit of a red flag for me. Now, he keeps a high pace, and he's got a good get-up game. Those two things, I think, make him very much the side against Malcolm Gordon, a guy who, like I said, just has to get touched once or twice to get dropped. But again, I don't want to back somebody at that price tag making his debut when he gives up those kind of layup takedowns. If anything, I will be looking for the KO prop here on Denise Bondar. I'll be looking for the inside the distance because more than likely he finishes. He's finished every fight up until this point. I don't know. I had the balls to back Gordon in his last fight because Figueiredo is so bad. But I don't know that I have the balls to go back to the well here, Liam. What are you doing first fight of the night?
Yeah, man. And I don't want people to get this impression that I just only come out here and try and pick underdogs and this kind of thing. But I'm going to pick another underdog here. I think that Denise Bondar can win this fight. He's a solid enough prospect, but he's relatively untested, guys. And it was not very long ago that a 19-year-old guy who hasn't won a fight since, by the way, he was 7-1 at the time, 19 years old, was on his back, taking him down, moving to positions, getting reversed because he was getting too excited. That was not very long ago. And now you've got, again, is Malcolm Gordon anybody's favorite fighter to bet on? No, because you're going to have a small heart attack every time. He's the Jason Witt of the flyweights, right? If you get this guy right on the chin, he starts doing weird dances and stuff. But I'm also going to insist that, it's a little different to lose to the number 11 and number 13 flyweight in the world than it is to be giving up positions to 19-year-olds that don't win more fights on the regional scene after they lose to you. It's that's a lot different in quality. So yes, he's had embarrassing losses in the UFC. Sue Mudarji hit him and he did the stanky leg and the face plant. I know all those things. But I'm also saying that Malcolm Gordon, I think that he showed off last time. He knows what he needs to do. He needs to not get punched in the face, get right after people, try everything he can to wrestle them, grapple them, get it to the ground. And Bondar is going to probably accept that. He likes to wrestle. He likes to grapple. He's all about getting it to the ground. So in that kind of fight, now I think it's anybody's ball game. Now I think, who's to say Malcolm Gordon can't do what this 19-year-old that I've never heard of was doing just a few fights ago? I don't know why he can't do that. He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. So yes, if you hit this guy on the chin, he's going to have a brown belt, a purple belt, like the old expression goes. I understand those things. It's not like I'm going into this laying, a 10-unit hammer. Malcolm Gordon can't lose this fight. Of course he can lose this fight. And if he gets dinked on the chin, I won't be the first one surprised. But I don't think Dennis Bondar is like this massive hitter on the feet, right? I've seen him lose striking matches on the feet in these weird like regionals where there's no cage and they're just guys like go for a takedown and the referee stands you back up. I couldn't follow what they're doing there, but seems, like he's not fighting the highest level of competition. And Malcolm Gordon, say what you will about the guy. I know TKO is not the highest level of competition. He hasn't been given gifts in the UFC. That Figueiredo fight is like a fight that people didn't expect him to win, and then he did win. So now in retrospect, we're like, hey, that was a winnable fight for him. Yeah, but you didn't think so last time. And who's to say that this UFC newcomer is not a winnable fight for him, right? How many times do we see guys that even go on to be good, that even go on to be solid, lose their debut? And I'm not saying Bondar is going to be that case, but he's a guy who keeps pulling out of fights due to injury, and now he's minus 250 in a UFC debut. Again, 70+%. And we're saying, doesn't matter that he's a debutant. Doesn't matter he's never fought anybody of substance, really. It doesn't matter that, he doesn't have any good wins to his name. It's Malcolm Gordon. And I'm saying it doesn't matter who this guy is. That's a lot of assumptions to make now. Because what I have seen is that he can make mistakes that are basic. He's not a world-class grappler who's not going to make any mistakes. There will be openings for Malcolm Gordon to get on top in this fight, whether it's through wrestling or through sweeps. I believe that. So the question is, does Malcolm Gordon get stiffed on the chin early? Maybe. How high an outcome is that at flyweight? I don't know. Against a guy who's a primary grappler? Probably less. These are the thoughts that come to my mind. So last fight of the night, don't want to belabor the point. I think Malcolm Gordon is probably the value side here as the underdog. I'm going to have a bet on him this weekend.
Godspeed, Liam. I love the angles. I love the ballsy big bet. I love that plus number. I see all the things that you're seeing. I really do. And like I said, Malcolm Gordon got that layup last time out. I just don't think he can keep replicating that type of success. And this is one where, even though I've said the line is too wide and the favorite probably wins, and I got talked onto a gigantic dog with you on, the last one, that chin is the thing that will keep me away in this spot, because I think someone just throwing a wild shot can end the night here in this first fight. So I completely agree. It's too high of a price tag for Bondar. I don't know how legit he is. I don't know if he belongs in the UFC. But if he does like a Grammy roll and accidentally knees Gordon in the face, it could be all over. So I'm not putting my money on Malcolm Gordon in this particular spot. Thank you all so much for tuning in to the show. We broke the whole damn thing down. We went a little bit long, Liam. Thank you for hanging out and talking fights with me. I honestly lost track of time as we were chatting there on that one. Over 2 hours of solid content, 200 live viewers on the podcast tonight. Everybody hit that like button on your way out. And do me a favor, head on over to Twitter. Follow my guy, Liam. He's got his handle right down there on the bottom for you. Thank you so much for joining me, my friend. And hey, as always, the floor is yours. Shout them out. Let the people know what you're doing. Where can they find your content? What are you about? Go ahead. Take your time. Have your say, man.
Absolutely, Clint. I really appreciate the opportunity. I lost track of time too, because that's what it's like when you're talking with somebody that you have a great time. You both have the same interests. We love these fights. We're looking for those sharp angles, try and make a little cheddar. Cheddar always makes it better. And, fights are expensive, so you got to make some on the other side. You can find me at Liam Picks Fights everywhere. I'm trying to share free information, make your life a little easier. And, moving forward, also trying to offer more in terms of selling my notes. I do very in-depth, tape study notes. So if you're interested in that, you can go ahead and slide on the DMs. Liam picks fights everywhere, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Delphi Sports is the brand that I work with as well. My man at Delphi Commish has been absolutely killing it. So if you're looking to bet on ball sports, I don't know anything about that. I only know about this combat stuff, but I really appreciate this opportunity, Clint. I've had a heck of a fun time. I hope that the underdogs absolutely spaz for us this weekend, because I did the due diligence and I like a lot of dog spots, and I'm hopeful that they come through. I'm hopeful that, whether you like these picks and you end up following them, whether you fade them, hopefully you got smarter. Hopefully you learned something about the fights. And that's what we're trying to do, is go down into the mud, figure out where can we find some sharp angles, but also, break down these matchups. Where are they going to break down stylistically? And that's the fun of it all, man, is we get to see our work tested on a weekly basis and come back to the drawing board when it doesn't go our way.
Completely agree, man. Completely agree. And anybody that hasn't been running with me for a while, anybody who's new to the show, Liam hit the nail on the head. We're trying to make you smarter, better bettors. And whether you like our picks or not, I'm telling you where I'm putting my money. You can do with that information what you will. Strap up your big boy pants, put your belt on. If you decide to put your money on the line, that's all you, baby, putting it there. You can always say thank you to the people that help you got to that decision. But at the end of the day, you've got to make the choice to place your money on the line of your own accord. Thank you all so much for hanging out with us tonight. This was a really damn fun show. Liam, we will absolutely have you back on the podcast one of these days. Everybody out there, we are just getting rolling. To my male audience, Valentine's Day is coming up. I know 90% of you forgot. So if you got a wife, if you got a girl, get your ass in gear. You better get out there and buy something, because you're running out of time. You're welcome. Have a wonderful week and good luck on all your degenerate action. Let's roll.